way up. It's eyeball to eyeball.
Wow.
And I thought to myself, what am I going to do when it climbs over my face? But then a miracle happened. It raised its two front legs and waved them around. And then it turned around and walked down the side of the sheet.
Boris Johnson had been attacked by an ostrich. The former PM was enjoying a safari trip with his family when the bird leaned into his car and went oi oi and pecked his hand. In footage shared online, he quickly jerked from the ostrich. Don't dirty minds away from the ostrich, and shouted, "Oh, Christ, get hell," before driving off. And so I just set it out there. Have you been attacked by an animal? When I was about 7, says Trevor Jenkins, on holiday in Spain in the 70s, a monkey pulled my long hair. It was long because it was the 70s. I was in floods of tears. And as the family car drove out the car park, an elephant ripped off the car mirror. We got the message. Spanish animals aren't to be trusted. Jeremy, Brittany here from the United States. I was spurred by a rooster in my right foot a few years ago. Spurred? How do you get spurred by a rooster?
One here from Dan in Hampshire. Morning, Mike. Is an Aussie that has been dive-bombed by our version of the magpie, which is much bigger, every springtime. The folk in this village need to use the old Aussie trick to stop being swooped. You have to wear an ice cream tub on your head with eyes drawn on the back so they think you're watching them. True story. We've just been talking in the office here about how many of us
across the UK on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, good morning to you. Yes, it's 6:02. You're obviously up because you're hearing me saying this and the fact that it's 6:02. So good morning to you on this, hopefully, what's going to be, I can't see yet because it's not quite light, but bright and sunny Saturday morning. So over the next 4 hours, we are going to deliver you news, information, opinion, and hopefully, despite the fact that Britain is falling apart before our very eyes, we will do it with some panache and maybe even some humour. We are going to be talking about crime, migrants, that won't surprise you, the Trump-Putin no deal. I don't think anyone's surprised that they didn't walk away from their 3 or 4 hour soiree last night in Alaska without a decisive deal, but we will be talking some more about that as the show progresses. Ricky Jones, of course, we broke that news yesterday that Ricky Jones has been found not guilty of inciting violence. Many of you seem to be very surprised about that. Let's discuss that insofar as whether it really does represent two-tier justice. Maybe it doesn't. Let's see. And of course, we've got our head-to-head later. That should be fun. We have Reem Ibrahim, who is brilliant, facing off against Luke Hilliard, who is from the High Pay Centre. And I'll give you a little clue about Luke Hilliard. The fact that he represents the High Pay Centre, he is not an advocate of high pay, rather the opposite. So I think he and I are going to get on just fine on the basis that he doesn't seem to like wealth and financial success very much. We used to call that socialism. Anyway, let's see how that plays out. As ever, in head-to-head, I will be sitting back and trying to keep my mouth shut as much as possible and letting the debate ensue. We have the Reform candidate for Epping, Orla Minihan, later on. We've got Sophia Slade from The Sun. We've got some sport. We've got Amanda Devlin doing showbiz and so on. But we thought we'd do the best first, which is the wonderful, the beautiful fact that I have with me for the first hour and a half, Mr. Peter Bleksley. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. You're a bit bright and sunny and cheery, aren't you, for this time of the day?
Well, if you're going to get up before the crack of dawn,
have you been to bed
and have an hour? Oh, I have. Oh, at my age, believe you me, when I
bed at 7.
When I 8 actually, right? I pushed the boat out and was in my uncle Ned by 8 o'clock.
Good for you. How very, very sensible. So bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, as we say.
Indeed.
Peter Bleksley, as you will see as we pursue the next hour and a half, you will agree with me by about 7:30 this morning that this man should actually be the Metropolitan Police Commissioner. I don't know if they'll ever ask you back. Do you think, Pete, is that likely? I mean, I think you'd be a worthy replacement to the woke Mark Rowley, frankly.
You've got more chance of Nelson getting his eye back than me ever being invited to return to the Metropolitan
Would you go
Police.
back if you got a call from the Home Secretary under maybe a slightly different government in 2029? They said, hey, Blexley, we've got a job for you. What would you do?
Well, the thing is, you see, I only ever occupied the lowest detective rank because
The coalface.
that greasy polar promotion was not for me. I chose specialisation.
Proper policing.
Yeah, and as a result, I had the most astonishing career. I went to places that I never dreamt I would, and spent a lot of time working undercover, and gained a lot of skills and specialisms and exposure to various parts of
But Pete,
policing.
that's exactly what is missing from the higher echelons of the police service.
Correct.
Police service or police force? Police
Service.
Is it
Metropolitan
service or
Police
force?
Service. Don't
Another
use the
debate.
word force.
Another
You'll
debate.
trigger some of the
Yeah,
fluffies.
that's way too aggressive.
Yes. Oh, goodness
Way
me.
too aggressive. Anyway, so that there you go. Look, in the first 3 or 4 minutes already, that is all that is wrong with British policing. That you haven't got old hands that have got their hands dirty in the nicest possible way at the coalface of British policing. That's why policing is in the state it's in, as I'm sure that we will rehearse over the next hour and a half. But the first thing that I want to talk to you about, Peter Blexley, is tonight marks a milestone, a turning point in British broadcasting, particularly where sport's concerned. Now, there's a football thing going on apparently at the moment, which we'll talk about later, which I don't know anything about because I don't follow football. Peter Blexley does. He happens to support a team, the Queen's Park Rangers or something similar to that. You can hear him sighing. But let's talk about the fact that tonight will be the first match of the day to be hosted, here we go, since Mr. Gary Lineker was removed, I think we can say that, removed from his match of the day pedestal. A little round of applause, I think, that we no longer have to suffer Gary Lineker at 10 o'clock or whatever it is, I've got no idea, on a Saturday night. I put this to you, Mr. Blexley, that the viewing figures will not only not suffer at all, but they might even go up.
Well, I, as a huge football fan, have been all my life. I do tend to watch this Match of the Day programme, but it gets repeated on a Sunday morning. I tend to work Saturday evening, so I don't get to see it. But I watch it on a Sunday morning. And when Lineker was in the chair, and it will be exactly the same with its new reincarnation, what I do is I get up, start the show, pause it, and attend to my ablutions, make a cuppa, maybe pop outside on the patio and have a cig. Don't smoke, kids. It's a ridiculous, smelly, antisocial, life-shortening habit. Don't do it. And as such like, make a bit of toast. And so I keep my... so the show is on enough of a delay that when I sit down, I can fast-forward it and only watch the bits where there are people playing football.
So you skip Gary Lineker?
I completely skipped Gary Lineker. All the tiresome, woeful, nonsense football punditry, which is absolute nonsense. I mean, does anybody know what a false number 9 is? It's just cobblers.
Do you think all football punditry is nonsense? I mean,
Yes.
I've got to be careful because we are sitting about 10 metres away from talkSPORT here, but because I don't really, I'm just not into football at all. I don't get it. I'm not an advocate. I'm not a fan. Whenever I do hear a little snippet of commentary from talkSPORT or wherever else, I mean, it seems to be the most benign and obvious commentary, i.e. if we played better, we would have won. If we'd just scored one more goal, we would be in a better position. It's a game of two halves and so on. I don't see much intelligence to it.
It's mind-numbingly tiresome. So I don't watch any of that. Even my own team. You know, I watched 15 seconds of the manager's debrief after our defeat on Tuesday night away to Plymouth Argyle, and yes, I was in Plymouth, right? I watched 15 seconds of this manager just rolling out...
This is your own manager?
Yes.
The manager
rolling
of
out
QPR.
cliches, nonsense and drivel, and I vowed not to listen to one more word that he says for the rest of the season or for however long he's in charge of our team. I go to the games, I watch it, I don't need somebody to tell me all about it because I was there.
Well, or you were watching it on the telly or whatever. So, yeah, you don't need someone to tell you the bleeding obvious, particularly if it is wrapped up, as you say, in cliches and, sycophancy and so on. OK, all right, so let me know what you think of this. 0344 499 1000. Do you lament the demise of Mr Gary Lineker, audience? Tell us. I suspect most of you will not, certainly people that are used to listening to and watching this station, but some people might think that actually that £1.2 million whole that has been left on Saturday evenings and Sunday mornings is a shame. But I suspect he will be very, very soon forgotten. Gary Lineker, R.I.P. And I say that, of course, with big inverted commas. I don't think you're going to be missed, mate, and nor should you be. And now, of course, because you are unwound from the shackles of your BBC employment contract, you can, I guess, carry on without any criticism with your stupid political rants, your hypocrisy and your wokeness. And some people might look forward to that continuing. I certainly do not. But anyway, shall we move on to two other big characters?
Before we do, I'd just like to say that, you know, Gary Lineker has invested in a chain of migrant hotels. That's a complete fib, by the way. But I thought
you wouldn't put it past him.
Trigger you just for a moment or two.
Is that his spare room? Because he did famously say that he was going to take a migrant.
He did
take one.
He did.
For about 5 minutes.
Yeah.
What did he do? It was like a revolving door at Lineker Towers. If you just come in and I've just got 27 members of the press outside just to show that you are coming into my home, and then presumably ejected them straight out the back into a van and off somewhere else. Anyway, look, I'm not going to give Gary Lineker any more satisfaction of talking about him on this channel any further. We need to talk about matters of great importance. Gary Lineker is not one of those, despite the fact we've just spent 6 or 7 minutes talking about him, Peter. Let's talk about Trump-Putin. So this is their meeting yesterday, happened at about 8:30 UK time in Anchorage in Alaska. You can see now if you're watching on YouTube the respective world leaders, Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin, walking down the steps of their respective jets, shaking hands and getting on very, very well on the face of it. But of course, the newspapers and the media wires this morning are full of the fact that no deal was done. We shouldn't really be surprised, should we, that the men met for 3 or 4 hours over something as monumental and complicated and tragic, frankly, as the Ukraine-Russia war, but a deal was not done.
You know, we were just talking about inconsequential drivel in regards to football, right? In the build-up to this meeting yesterday, as I kind of flicked across some channels, which I should have known better than to be watching them, the amount of drivel that commentators, presenters were coming out with in the build-up to this meeting, when really the likelihood of anything concrete, of an immediate ceasefire being announced, was so hugely unlikely, not least of all because Volodymyr Zelensky wasn't there.
Yes.
So, you know, Putin and Trump were hardly likely to be in a position to announce an immediate ceasefire without one of the warring parties being there.
Well, yes, but Trump, of course, had said that he would be disappointed if he were to walk away and that there was not a ceasefire. Well, he must therefore be disappointed this morning on the basis that hasn't happened. Also, Trump being the man, of course, that said when he took office that he would solve the problem of the war between Ukraine and Russia in 24 hours. Well, we are now several months on. But look, without putting too fine a point on it, I think that the Trump intervention, despite the fact that, of course, he is naive if he thinks that he is going to resolve this quickly, particularly with the ego that is probably even more monumental than his own, and that is that of Vladimir Putin. But I think his intervention ultimately will be helpful. I think, you know, even though he's a bull in a china shop and he's no diplomat in terms of his diplomatic style, if you want, I suspect that the dialogue that will now ensue and the forthcoming meetings, there will be now a meeting between Vladimir Putin and Zelensky, I think it might come to something. And I'll tell you why I think that. And that is because Putin and Zelensky are at a stalemate. They have been for 2.5 to 3 years in terms of land grab, and certainly when it comes to, first of all, the human cost of this conflict, but of course the financial cost, both to Russia and, I was going to say, to Zelensky in the Ukraine, but it's mainly the West, because of course we've been funding it for the last 2.5 years or so. I think all of these men, Trump included, but particularly Vladimir Putin and Volodymyr Zelensky, need a door to reverse out of with some kind of dignity because of the size of their egos. So I suspect Trump being the deal maker as such, the referee, I think he could facilitate that, Pete.
This could have been dealt with 2.5 years ago if we'd had any significant politician on this planet with some courage. And we didn't have Johnson, no courage, Biden, no courage whatsoever. And I'll tell you how this could have been resolved. On the day that Russia invaded a sovereign territory, which is Ukraine, Boris Johnson and other leaders could have gone to Volodymyr Zelensky and said, right, there you go, sign there, and you're a part of NATO.
NATO, yeah.
right?
Indeed.
You're in. You're in.
It would have solved it immediately.
Within weeks, we would have smashed Putin's troops all the way back to Moscow.
Well, we would have ended up with one of two situations: either Putin backing off, which of course would be very uncharacteristic, or World War III, I guess.
No, but you see, so many people fell into this trap with Putin and his nuclear threats, right? Putin has such a huge opinion of himself and is such a narcissist that actually, you know, we could drop a nuke, I say we, us and our allies, could drop a nuke right between Putin's eyes if we wanted to. And Putin knows that. He wasn't going to go and start a nuclear war over NATO troops
that he would ultimately
his lot back to Moscow.
Yeah,
he wouldn't do that.
But he has shown, Pete, hasn't he, Putin, I think, unfortunately for him, the weakness of the Russian military. You know, the whole kind of bare-chested horse-riding Putin, you know, thumping his chest and, you know, trying to give us the perception that the bear, so to speak, in terms of the Russian military might, is greater than anything else on the planet. What we've seen over the last 3 years, I think, as a consequence, really, of the very lacklustre progress that the Russian military have made, you know, not least the casualties that they've taken, both at rank and file level, but also generals and so on. What we've actually seen is that the Russian military is nothing like we thought it was. I mean, he's really shown his hand to be much, much weaker than it really was.
And he claimed within 3 days of the invasion, he would be parading around the parliament, the grand cathedrals, and all the other significant buildings in Kyiv. And he didn't, and he's nowhere near it because. And what's his army now? Full of conscripts taken from prisons and such like, and dragged off the streets and being slaughtered in their thousands.
Yeah, and let's not forget, we talk a lot about the hostages in Gaza, as we should, and the fact that there are still some unreleased. But Vladimir Putin, of course, has kidnapped lots and lots of children, actually, from the Ukraine, which no one ever seems to talk about. Now, when it comes to any peace deal, any ceasefire, surely the return of those hostages should be paramount in any conversation, one would imagine. But the mainstream media are not talking about those thousands of people that have effectively been taken off the street and held to ransom.
Whether it be Putin, whether it be Hamas, whether it be Hezbollah, whether it be any of those kind of characters and organisations, they understand one thing and one thing only, and that is the language of violence, of might, of power. And you have to utilise all of those things if you want to put those people and keep them in their place. If we'd gone in and pushed Putin's troops back, which we could have done relatively easily, swiftly, efficiently, we wouldn't be having this conversation today.
And the way that this plays out, though, of course, is that there will ultimately be a concession of territory. That's what's going to happen. And I think, OK, Zelensky obviously needs to sign up to that, but I think he's going to be put in a position where if the money is threatened to dry up from Europe and the United States in terms of funding the Ukraine effort, if that threat is played out from the West on the basis that Zelensky otherwise doesn't give up any territory, well, look, it's going to put Zelensky in an impossible position. So I think he's going to have to end up accepting the annexing of the Donbass region.
And if territory is surrendered to Putin, you have appeased an aggressor.
And do you think Poland's next?
Where will be next? Precisely. You will encourage him in his quest to re-establish the USSR, which is essentially
what he wants to do.
What he wants to do.
Because he sees himself as a 21st century Stalin. Talking of inappropriate behaviour, Ricky Jones. Now, you and I talked about this when I was hosting yesterday. This rather surprising verdict insofar as Ricky Jones being cleared of inciting violence. Let's just have a look at this.
We've got children and women using those trains, destroying some relatives. They are disgusting, nasty bastards, and we need to cut all their throats and get rid of them all.
They are disgusting Nazi fascists and they should have their throats cut and be killed. That says a jury, and let's be very, very clear. There's been a lot of confusion, shall we say, on social media, I think it's fair to say, over the last 12 hours or so, with regard to lots and lots of commentators not seeming to understand that this was a jury decision. So this was not the judiciary. The judiciary perhaps would have given direction insofar as the trial over the last 4 or 5 days, but it was ultimately a jury decision at Snaresbrook County Court, Crown Court. So that is as it is. I think we should understand. But there's been a lot of talk, Pete, about this being an example of two-tier justice, but there are lots and lots of reasons why the likes of Chris Phillips, the Shadow Home Secretary that called this two-tier justice yesterday, are wrong, because this is not the same situation as Lucy Connolly.
No, it's different in many, many regards. Lucy Connolly pleaded guilty. Ricky Jones pleaded not guilty and had a trial. I can't help but think that Lucy Connolly was very poorly advised. But anyway,
and we have to ask ourselves who by, right? Whether it was it state/court-appointed lawyers, or was it her own? Because I think there's a big question here. This is probably the main debate for me over the next few days. Who were the lawyers that gave Lucy Connolly the advice, which was to say that she should plead guilty rather than facing otherwise on the basis of a non-guilty and a not guilty plea, potentially longer on remand than she would have done as a consequence of a sentence?
Well, let's rewind a little bit then, shall we, to last year and those appalling post-Southport riots and disturbances that we saw, and I'm sure we all condone. What happened was when people got arrested, and I speak from having spent time with a young man who was arrested at the Westminster demonstration. Do you remember the one that happened in Westminster?
Yeah.
All at the same kind of time as all the other events were playing out. And he was a young man who got arrested at that Westminster one. And he was put under considerable pressure by a solicitor appointed to represent him, not a CPS lawyer, not a prosecuting lawyer, a defence lawyer. He was put under huge pressure to plead guilty. He said, but I didn't do anything. He said, the only thing I did was bend down to help a woman who dropped her phone in the melee as the police encroached upon them. He said, and I helped her and she fell over and she lost a shoe. He said, and now I'm being accused of all sorts of things which I fundamentally did not do. The lawyer said, well, just accept a guilty plea to a lesser charge and it'll all go away. He said, I'm not doing that. He said, I'm absolutely not doing it. Fortunately, this young man managed to ring his dad, who's a mate of mine and is a man of some means, and said, whatever you do, son, if you've not done anything, don't plead guilty to it. This young man was remanded in custody, okay, and held in prison for a few days. On what
charge?
Oh,
incitement.
To start off, it was a fray, violent disorder.
And I remember these scenes. Westminster in particular was when, and forgive me if I'm wrong, so I want to get this right, I don't want there to be any bias creeping in here. Now, as I understand it, and from what I saw of those protests in Westminster and elsewhere, but particularly Westminster, was when the police then decided to kettle protesters, peaceful protesters, and then were randomly running in and, you probably have a police term for this, but extracting people from those protests, even though it appeared to me that those people were not committing offences, dragged them out and arrested them. It seemed as though it was not only unnecessary, but kind of provocative almost on the part of the police. So he was part of that, and he was, and I'd say he fell victim to that, it seems.
So he was charged, remanded in custody, spent 4 or 5 days in prison, while his father, this is a young man with no previous convictions, he's inquisitive about politics, he knows what he thinks is right, and actually he's going to join the army, okay? That's how he wants to serve his country. So he gets remanded into prison. Now you imagine any kind of conviction being born out of this arrest would scupper his career prospects. And his dad said, get your head down, I'll get a lawyer. Eventually, he was granted bail. There was a special bail hearing, and he was granted bail.
Unlike Lucy Connolly.
Indeed. And then, at a later stage, his defence counsel applied to the court to have the case listed for a judge to look at the evidence pre-trial, before an actual trial.
As a summary trial as such? So
No, at a Crown Court, in front of a judge, okay, right, at the Inner London Crown Court. And I went to that. And the defence counsel stood up, and their argument was, there just isn't the evidence here. Sling this case out. And video was shown, and there was a pathetic presentation by the prosecution. And the judge retired, and within a matter of a few minutes he came back into the court and said, I concur entirely with what the defence say. There simply is no evidence whatsoever to support the charge, and he slung it out, quite rightly so. If that young man, however, had bowed to the pressure put on him by a solicitor who was supposed to be representing his best interests, he would have gone to prison. He would have a conviction that would have scuppered his career chances in going into the army and serving his country, and goodness knows what other impact that would have had. I fear many others bowed to that pressure to enter early guilty pleas.
Well, they did, and many have been incarcerated on the basis of that advice being taken and accepted. They pleaded guilty and are now serving sentences. Lucy Connolly, of course, famously 31 months. Peter Lynch, of course, who then committed suicide in prison, a man with his own mental health issues who you could easily argue, I think, was caught up in this as a legitimate peaceful protester and unfairly convicted stroke given a sentence that was completely and utterly disproportionate. So the question is, we're going to go to break in a minute, but maybe we'll carry on the answer to this question after it, but just help me out, if you will, before we go to break with this. Where's the pressure coming from, Pete, do we think? Do we think this is just overzealous woke police officers that have a political agenda, or is this coming from the very top? Is this coming from Keir Starmer and Lord Hermer, who is the Attorney General? We know that Lord Hermer intervened with regard to the Lucy Connolly case in terms of signing off the sentence effectively, and also, it seems, being involved with pressure not to give Lucy Connolly bail, which I think is outrageous. Political pressure on the judiciary. Do we think this is coming from the top, or is this a political agenda by senior police officers?
We do not think we know. Look at the comments that Keir Starmer and Sir Mark Rowley, Commissioner of the Met Police, made at the time. They talked about the full force of the law, the full might of the judiciary, all those kind of statements that they were making at the time. We know where it came from.
Let's continue this after the break. Interesting stuff, revelations. Get involved, by the way, 0344 499 1000. I'm sure you will have a view on the Ricky Jones verdict yesterday and whether you think it does represent and resemble two-tier justice. We'll get into a bit more detail in terms of exactly what happened yesterday with regard to the verdicts. Obviously, Peter Bleksley is very much across this. We're also going to be talking about the wonderful individual that is this so-called TikTok migrant that we spoke about yesterday, actually, Parwiz Hanifyar, who has a rather interesting repertoire when it comes to how-to guides on TikTok, including not only how to get across the channel with your hand out and take as much as you possibly can from the British taxpayer, but also the wonderfully titled How to Kill Your Wife. More on that when we come back.
But it's the whole concept of being left-wing is that you believe that people are naturally, but So if somebody is naturally outside of that, then there is something wrong with them. And the left can't do the whole person and politics. No. They can't separate it. So it's why they can't do the art and artist problem as well. So that, you know, they edit everything by one artist after they've been found guilty of something must never be heard again. They don't really get that separation. But it really is in their pathology. It's halo polishing is a lot of the big problem that we have with the left.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back, 6:31. I'm Russell Quirk, in for Alex Phillips, here till 10 o'clock. Peter Caldwell after me. Talking of Peters, I'm joined by Peter Blexley for the next hour or so. Judging by your calls and your texts, you're rather liking the first half an hour of this. We will inject some more humour, some more light-hearted stuff as we go on, but we need to get the tough stuff out the way, really. It's hard to be humorous, frankly, about the likes of Ricky Jones, even though he's been cleared of the offence of inciting violence towards legitimate protesters that he labels as Nazis and says that they should have their throats cut. We did take the mickey out of Gary Lineker. I think that was fairly light-hearted because he's useless and definitely not worth 1.2 million quid of our money, and so on. But we are now going to talk some more about this TikTok migrant. This name should be burned into your brains, ladies and gentlemen. Parwiz Hanifiar. As we speak, Parwiz Hanifiar, you can see on YouTube here, is literally lying in bed in a 4-star Heathrow hotel with all of the trappings and adornments that you would expect from such a place. No doubt he's got a buffet downstairs waiting for him, breakfast open till 10 o'clock, have what you like. And later on, by the way, we'll be reading out all of the wonderful benefits, all of the wonderful things that as a migrant to this country you can have and expect. And Parwiz Hanifiar is really taking that to the extreme, to the extent that he has provided a very, very helpful video on TikTok to all of his friends back in wherever he hails from, I don't know, Afghanistan, Syria.
Afghanistan.
Yeah, or anywhere, really. I mean, of course, he could have come from India, Vietnam, even. Lots of places that, despite the fact they're not war-torn, people come from those places and still play the asylum card. Be very clear, Parwiz Hanifiar and others, they're not refugees, they're not fleeing any persecution. If they were, they would bring their wives, their sisters, their mothers and their children with them, and they don't do that. They are here with their hands out to get all the free stuff that we stupidly, as British government and its taxpayers, give them. But not content with having his hand out and having all of these wonderful benefits given to him, including this free 4-star hotel with everything that goes with it, Parwiz Hanifiar decided, actually, when he was residing in Germany, and we'll come back to that in a second as to why he's here, not in Germany, he decided to put a video up which explains very, very succinctly, in much detail, how to kill your wife and how to get away with it on the basis that, despite perhaps being Muslim and being anti-alcohol, you should down a bottle of spirit, and that will allow you to get off the hook as far as the judicial system in Britain, because of course, as we rehearse plentifully on this channel, it is woke, it is broke, it is ultra liberal, and he says in this video, as a consequence, you'd only do 7 years and you can come out and marry someone else and perhaps kill them too. Pete, you couldn't make this up, could you?
Name and shame. He's in the Heathrow Crown Plaza Hotel.
Is he?
Okay, yes.
Okay.
So let's get that out there.
Yeah.
Right.
But also the extension of this story that in fact I think the Sun have revealed today. Of course, we had the Sun here yesterday. Thomas, one of the journalists that had broken this story yesterday, and they've embellished it even further to say that they found out that he's fled from Germany because actually, despite being an asylum seeker that presumably was still part of the asylum process, he'd found a job in a Berlin branch of a chicken and kebab takeaway called Munchies, I kid you not, but got fired because despite having a job in the Western world, you'd think he'd be grateful and appreciative, he couldn't be bothered to turn up on time.
Yeah, and let's give credit where it's due to the Sun for doing such great work on this. The video on how to kill your wife has been taken down by the social media platform, about time too, but not before it got about 900,000 views, as I understand it. And this Hanifiah has been in Germany, got booted out of there, gone via France, obviously got from there over to here.
They bust him here, as we've seen from
Yeah.
footage this week. Bust him from France to the shores of Calais, helped him onto a boat, and then the RNLI presumably have helped him on the last bit of the journey so that he could be received with warm open arms by Border Force and taken directly to a four-star
Them
hotel.
or a Border Force cutter vessel, quite possibly, yeah, indeed. And he has done videos from the Crown Plaza Hotel, showing the room, showing the facilities, boasting about what he's got, encouraging people in their droves to come to the UK, telling them how to do it, following that route. And so undoubtedly people will watch that and be inspired by this piece of garbage.
Isn't he effectively part of, I mean, he's the equivalent of one of the gangs that Keir Starmer has said many, many times over the last 18 months or so he seeks to smash. I mean, this guy is effectively an advert for fake asylum seekers. And yet, I think as we speak, he is still in that four-star hotel in Heathrow.
Yeah, imagine if he'd been doing this in America. By now, he'd be in an orange jumpsuit, shackled, hand and
surrounded
foot.
by alligators.
Yes, and on his way out of the US,
Yeah.
which quite frankly is exactly what should happen to this bloke. But when we say he's in the Crown Plaza, please bear in mind that he undoubtedly will have been given a phone at some point.
Which he's then using to mock us.
Yes, they are not detained in these hotels. He might have used that phone to ring a fellow Afghan who's got into this country illegally in goodness knows how long ago, right? And he could have legged it from that hotel. He might not be there. And the authorities will have no idea wheresoever, quite possibly, this person is. And this could be replicated time and time and time and time again.
Well, let's just have a little recap, shall we, in terms of the up-to-date numbers. So there have been 51,123 Channel migrants arrive on these shores since Keir Starmer became Prime Minister on the 5th of July 2024. The migrant numbers just for 2025, so just for the last 7 and a bit months, 27,881, and during August alone we are only halfway through 2,445 migrants. Pete, I think you tweeted yesterday actually how many we've seen in just the last 3, 4,
in the
5
last
days.
6 days, which didn't include yesterday's figure because that hadn't been published yet, 2,042 in 6 days.
Yeah.
In 6 days only.
Yeah.
2,042.
And we have this false rhetoric, this spin, these lies, this deception from, of course, the Labour government, from Yvette Cooper as our hapless Home Secretary and Keir Starmer, who continue to try and gaslight us that actually this is not a problem anymore, or according to Jackie Smith, who of course is an ex-Home Secretary, actually it's not their fault, there's nothing they can do about it. But despite all of the rhetoric and, you know, the whole smashing the gangs nonsense, which we always knew was nonsense, and guess what? It's turned out to be nonsense. We are now seeing more and more of these migrants coming over. And this is just the migrants on boats. Don't forget, there's still some coming over on lorries.
Oh, backs of lorries hidden, concealed.
Yeah. So anonymous. We don't know who they are. We don't know what their records are. The other thing I want to talk about before we go to another break. God, this is really whizzing, isn't it? This this show. It's 20 to 7 nearly already. I want to talk about the fact that often on footage that we see on social media outside of these migrant hotels, whether it's the Barbican, Canary Wharf, whether it's Epping or whatever, we have seen footage of Harris fencing, police officers, protesters and counter-protesters, right? So just have that in your mind in terms of the scene being set. And then all of a sudden a police officer opens up the Harris fencing and what pops out? But 3 or 4 balaclavaed individuals on mopeds with boxes on the back. And I don't want to label any one company as culpable here specifically. Let's just call them food delivery riders, shall we? asylum seekers are not permitted to work. It seems to me, let's be very obvious and clear here, tell it how it is, that there are a number of asylum seekers that are coming here and not just taking 4-star hotels and buffets and free driving lessons and goodness knows what else we are throwing at them, but they are working illegally and under false pretences somehow as food delivery riders. That's clear, isn't it? They definitely are doing that.
Is the roll of shame for the last 6 days, okay? And I'm sorry to ruin everybody's breakfast.
We're supposed to be doing this with humour.
But my humour's gone for a walk for a few minutes.
We'll be back with some tongue-in-cheek, but carry on, Pete. Go on.
9th of August, 435 in 7 boats. 10th of August, 281, 5 boats. 11th of August, 474 in 8 boats. 12th of August, 445 in 6 boats. 13th of August, last one, I promise you, 325 in 4 boats. And so it goes.
There was reports this week that there's now a super boat. So these boats take famously, of course, about 80 people each, which is why, again, our hapless Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, said, I know what I'll do. I'll come down very heavily on anyone that comes over in a boat if there's more than 80 people in it, which is a bit like saying, I'm going to nick the getaway driver for speeding at 35 and a 30 as he leaves the bank. I mean, it's pathetic. It's ridiculous. Look, the humour's back, everybody. The humour's back. But there's now super boats where the smugglers now have such abandon when it comes to their concern about being caught that they're now finding ways of getting more migrants here quicker in bigger boats. There's also, and I kid you not, ladies and gentlemen, it is apparent that you can upgrade when you're in those boats. So if you are a people smuggler that has spent, let's say, £2,000 as a consequence of seeing one of these videos, actually, maybe from Parwiz Hanifyar, who is the ambassador for migration, it seems, from third world countries, that yes, you can have more leg room. I don't know if there's a buffet service, Pete, on these boats as they come over. Maybe there's a little in-boat movie.
Well, we've all like to get on an airplane and turn left, wouldn't we? But us commoners, we all turn right.
But now you can as a migrant.
You get on one of them and turn left.
No, you can. You sit where you like. So maybe you can choose your seat. Do you want to be on the end? Do you want to be
extra
at the front?
leg room?
Yeah, at the back. It's only another 250 quid. I kid you not. I mean, this is the way these people smugglers, these gangs that, by the way, generally aren't here. By the way, they're in other countries, which means they're outside of our jurisdiction, which means we can't smash them even if we want to. That they are the two fingers that the gangs are sticking up at the British government and indeed the British people. OK, more of this when we come back. We're also going to be talking about JD Vance and a pub in the Cotswolds that I'm going to rather fondly suggest you boycott. I'm Russell Quirk. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. It's 6:43. I'm still joined by Peter Blexley. We're going to talk about pubs now and the fact that you would imagine if you were the owner of a pub, if you were a landlord owning a business that you wanted to promote and indeed to thrive, that the prospect of the Vice President of the United States popping in for lunch with his family would be PR manna from heaven, wouldn't it? Oh, no. The bull in the Cotswolds decided, or rather the staff, it seems, the serving staff, no doubt the chefs, the hospitality staff at the Bull there in the Cotswolds, decided that despite having served Kamala Harris a few days previously, that the prospects of J.D. Vance, arguably the second most powerful man on the planet, the elected, I remind you, Vice President of the United States, on news that he was going to pop in and give them probably the best bit of PR, the best public relations coup you could ever dream up in your life. No, 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 they said, we're not serving him. And they cancelled his reservation. Now, I'm not quite sure who owns that pub and whether they were party to this decision, but I would suggest that as the owner or owners, either as a company or an individual of the Bull pub, the fact that you allowed that to happen and gave in to your woke staff, your activist left-leaning staff, was bad enough. But the fact that, OK, I am talking about the Bull, but in the wrong terms, the fact that you looked over, that you forewent that incredible PR opportunity with the world's media, cameras clicking, cameras rolling from a news perspective outside of your pub, to basically immortalise it for weeks and months to come. The fact that you fell over and stubbed your toe on that opportunity is one of the dumbest things, and I say this as a PR guy, by the way, is one of the dumbest things I think I've ever seen or come across in my life. So I think not only is it stupid on the part of the owners of that pub to have effectively cancelled, barred the Vice President of the United States, J.D. Vance, but I think that we should repay them in kind, Peter Blexley, by boycotting the Bull pub.
Now, this may come as a surprise to viewers and listeners, but I'm quite familiar with this part of the world. Yes.
I was going to say, I thought you were going to say the pub, because as an ex-copper, you probably know every pub in the southeast of England, I suspect.
The Cotswolds, right? I'm familiar with the Cotswolds, and I'll tell you how that came about, if I may, right? During World War II, my dear mum, who's approaching her 97th birthday and is still bringing us joy every day, was evacuated eventually to the Cotswolds, right? And she lived in a place called Chadlington, which is near Chipping Norton. We all know about the Chipping Norton set, don't we?
And Clarkson's farm and the farmer's dog, and it's
by the way,
cool.
I've been to the Diddley Squat Farm shop on a number of occasions because his Hawkstone lager is absolutely unbelievable, but it's an occasional treat.
Sorry, I think there's a case of Hawkstone lager on its way to Peter Blexley's house as we speak.
It's an occasional treat because it is rather expensive.
Expensive, isn't it?
So save up if you want to create a Hawkstone. Right, anyway, so I know Chipping Norton and Chadlington, right? And Charlbury, which is where the Bull is where the railway station that my granddad used to go to when he visited his children, in other words, my mum and my aunties and uncles, every couple of weeks rather, during the war.
So you were basically conceived near this pub?
Well, no, no, but my mum was evacuated.
What a horrible thought.
Of that. I wasn't conceived during the Second World War, yeah, so and so. I might look like I was, but anyway. So I know this part of the world. I go there regularly. The lady that my mum was evacuated to is still alive. There's family down there, you know, and it is a beautiful part of the world. It really is. But let me tell you, the staff at the Bull in Charlbury would have a very, very different attitude if they had a migrant hotel in Charlbury. How long would it take them to change their minds if in that beautiful Cotswold village every night there was groups of men hanging around in the park that the children used to like?
I don't know, it sounds, Pete, like they're so woke they would be the counter-protesters saying all refugees welcome with their pre-made banners, no doubt.
Yes, until the reality bites.
Well, of course, until common sense prevails. We should point out, by the way, the pub has been asked for comment. We have asked them to comment on this revelation, this stupidity, I would argue, and the pub has doggedly declined to comment in response to all media inquiries to confirm or deny that they cancelled the VP's planned dinner. it makes no sense at all, does it? And again, it does come back to the whole freedom of speech thing, doesn't it? I mean, do they have the right to ban him? I guess as a private business they do. But let's just be clear, he is the elected Vice President of the United States. It's not as if he took power by coup. You know, he's not some horrible South American dictator. This is not a Vladimir Putin. This is not a Kim Jong-un. I mean, he is a legitimately democratically elected member of the US administration, and they seek, because of their own warped, woke, left-wing, ultra-liberal, ridiculous views, to stop him having lunch with his family.
Last month, Kamala Harris had dinner in the Bull.
And that was okay. So they can't now advance the argument, we don't do politics, because, yes, the nearly, not quite, President of the United States.
But believe you me, all these people with these woke attitudes, these woke ideals and all of that, who have the great good fortune to live in a truly breathtakingly beautiful part of the country, will very, very soon change their minds when they've got migrant hotels in Chipping Norton, in Charlbury, in all these other kind of places. You just wait and see how quickly people's attitudes change. And when you live in a beautiful part of the Cotswolds, you are woken up by a call to prayer instead of a cockerel. Let's see what your attitudes are then.
Well, and also, we're going to go to break in a second, but my kind of last word on this before we go to break and come back and talk about data breaches, because yes, there's been another one that relates to the Ministry of Defence, is that if we end up in a situation where entities like pubs decide who they can serve based on that potential customers' political credentials, well, then they shouldn't be surprised if everyone of that political persuasion, in this case on the centre-right, does boycott their pub. The pub then closes, and those idiots that decided not to serve JD Vance end up losing their jobs. That would be what we would call, Pete, poetic justice.
It might well be. but
go on, final word.
But you know, my kids, not so long ago, went to university, okay? And of course, as per usual, got converted into Marxist lunatics, right?
You should throw them out the house.
They've been travelling, typically middle-class thing, which working-class parents.
We'll do this when we come back. We've got to go to a break. We've got to pay for this stuff somehow. I'm Russell Quirk. This is Talk. We're having fun here. Join in 0344 499 1000. Back after this.
I read only this morning about a case where somebody was arrested in 2023 and their trial is due to take place in 2029. That's a 6-year wait.
Yeah, that's a third.
Precisely. And it's not just the defendant. I don't know what the nature of the offence is, but there will presumably be a victim. And I think what we need to be focusing on is repairing the damage that consecutive governments have done to the criminal justice system.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. I'm Russell Quirk, in for Alex Phillips. I'm here till 10 o'clock. Peter Caldwell after me. I'm also back tomorrow. They're going to have me back. That will be 3 days on the trot. What's wrong with this place? Anyway, it's 5 to 7, and it's time to talk about this.
Yeah, so Christmas. It's not really, you know, and it comes round and you're all like, ding, 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 only a new and the boy them might pay the body. Oh, God bless her. And we say, come in. Oh, thank you. Oh, here's yours. I hope you like it. Oh, it doesn't see you at all.
Yeah, so I'm actually taking a picture of Peter Blexley's face. I genuinely have just done that because Peter Blexley just watched that for the first time, which is the national treasure. I say that with big inverted commas. That is Dawn French. Now, Dawn French, of course, famously a little while ago made, let's just say, rather the faux pas when she came out with similar gibberish insofar as her rather unfunny but meant as comedic view on Gaza, where she effectively lampooned, it seems, this is my interpretation, the victims of October the 7th. Now, it's being speculated that Dawn French may have, we don't know this for sure, but may have been dropped by Marks and Spencer's where their forthcoming Christmas advert is concerned. Watching that and listening to that, if that is true, if she has been dropped, I think we all now realise why. So this would not just be any cancellation, it would be a Marks and Spencer's cancellation, Peter Blexley.
There's an old music hall song which goes, "Don't put your daughters on the stage, Mrs. Worthington." And it's from many years ago. And it's a very kind of, you can look it up, I'm sure it'll be out there.
Are we going back to the war again here now?
Yes, all right.
You keep going back to it.
Yes. And there's a message in it. You know, it can be a risky thing, sending your people into show business, your kids into show business. I do have sympathy for people who have had huge success when they're younger, you know, really huge success, and then they struggle to try and stay relevant. As the spotlight shines elsewhere, their star begins to fade, they can't handle it, and they think they've got to be relevant, they've got to be popular, they've got to keep themselves out there, and they get reduced to doing things like that on TikTok.
When you say the star fades, I mean, did Dawn French ever have such a star? Was it ever shining, frankly, in terms of comedy? I mean, it's a bit like her ex-husband, Lenny Henry. I mean, I just don't think he's ever been funny. I don't think Dawn French has ever been funny. I mean, maybe as a character actor in The Vicar of Dibley, she wasn't bad, but I guess, I don't know if she wrote that or not, I suspect not. But as a comedienne in Dawn French, French and Saunders.
Yeah, French and Saunders was huge.
Yeah, it was. But again, I can't remember, you know, my side splitting much as a consequence of watching Dawn French in any scenario. So I hear what you say, but I mean, she really is the has-been that never was.
No. She was big at one point, and just because they're not our cup of tea.
Nice. That's not very nice.
Oh yeah, of course, yes. Just because they're not our cup of tea, we mustn't deny the fact that she's been in some hugely popular and very successful television shows. But what is undeniable now is that her star is waning, and I don't think she can handle it.
It's not just waning. I mean, that rant that we have just shown you, that we're still showing, albeit with the sound off, which is the best bit, by the way, it's deranged, Pete. It's deranged.
Yeah, I mean, she...
I mean, your face, I mean, I know it was genuine because you didn't know we were going to show that. I mean, that's why I had to take a picture of it. I mean, you were completely and utterly gobsmacked by that performance of hers just now, which, you know, no one's forced her to do that, by the way. She's picked up her phone one morning and she's decided to put that display on her social media. I mean, as if she thinks either it's funny, relevant or whatever. I mean, it's hardly endearing her, is it, to an audience, particularly the shareholders and the executive bosses in the marketing team at Marks and Spencer's, potentially.
It should come with that good old warning, please drink responsibly. I mean, I've no idea whether she'd had a booze or not when she did that. And believe you me, I've put some utter drivel out there after I've had a drink. But, you know, my star's never shone, so it can't wane, you see.
Yeah.
But that is...
Well, maybe she's been... you're suggesting potentially she's been at the Marks and Spencer's liquid hamper. Of course, I'm sure that's not the case, Dawn French, but that was definitely deranged, frankly. Well, look, when we come back, we're going to cheer you up as we're going to be reading out all the amazing perks that asylum seekers get when they come to Britain. There are loads of them. You're going to be triggered. You're not going to like it very much at all. Back after this, I'm Russell Quirk. This is Talk. How much, ladies and gentlemen, are fish and chips where you come from? And we'll go to Jason in Crewe.
Jason from Crewe, fish, chips and peas, £7.50. It's the best chippy in England.
Janice in Leeds, go.
Regarding fish and chips in Leeds, it's between £9.50 and £12.75.
Whitby, how much is fish and chips?
3 of us, fish, chips, peas, I think one of us curry sauce, 3 cans of pop, just short of 70 quid.
£70? That's 23 quid a head, man. Even my maths does that. Very quickly, a voice note. Campbell in Scotland, go.
Up here in Banff in the northeast of Scotland, we can get a fillet and a half of haddock with a regular chips for £8 and 10 pence, and it's by far and away one of the best chippies I've ever had.
Kenneth in Surrey, fish and chips, go.
Fish and chips in Ascot, about half a mile from where you used to live, will cost you £12 and 60 pence. Great show. Keep up the good work.
That's why I moved, because you were living there. When was the last time you had fish and chips?
Couple of weeks
How
ago.
much? Where'd you get it from?
I think it was about 40 quid. It was in the Ivy.
Honestly, you really are. For any of you who think he's a man of the people, I nearly said you're a...
Give me it real.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. It's 7 o'clock, just gone, 2 minutes past 7. Welcome to Talk Breakfast. I'm Russell Quirk, in for Alex Phillips, here until 10 o'clock. Back tomorrow as well for more of this. Hopefully you're enjoying it. Do join in, please. Call 0344 499 1000. We're getting calls already, lots of texts as well. I'm just going to read you a couple of those very quickly. Joanna from Salisbury says, Dawn French, what happened? She used to be funny when it was a script written by somebody else. She looks and sounds like she should be put in a nursing home. Put her out to grass. Well, it may well be, Joanna, that Marks and Spencer's have done exactly that. We don't know, but it looks like Marks and Spencer's might have cancelled her for their own reasons. And also Warwick from Devon says, perhaps that pub in the Cotswolds should be renamed with another word after the word bull. Yeah, I saw what you did there, Warwick. OK, look, 7:03, it's going to be trigger hour now. That's what I'm naming this hour, and I'll tell you for why. Is because I'm about to read out, I kid you not, these are all genuine perks that asylum seekers, so those that come here often pretending to be asylum seekers, let's be very, very clear, economic migrants with their hands out, encouraged by others that are effectively advertising the soft touch nature of Britain when it comes to being able to rock up here in a boat and get what you like. There is a growing list of perks that are available from the Home Office, from government, and indeed local authorities, and I'm going to read them out to you, so bear with me while I do this, because I'm afraid there's a lot of them, and then I'm going to get Peter Blexley's comment insofar as what he thinks about these, and maybe which ones are his, inverted commas, favourites. OK, you ready for this? You ready to be triggered? It's 7:04. I am sorry to do this so early. You might still be sitting in bed. You, I hope, have a caffeinated tea or coffee by your side, ready to calm your nerves as I tell you exactly what we as the taxpayer fund where asylum seekers are concerned. Here we go. Housing and food provided directly by the state. Hotel accommodation, including 3- and 4-star hotels with facilities such as free Wi-Fi, bar, restaurant, garden and terrace. A weekly allowance of £49.18 per person. Access to food banks, free cooking lessons, HC2 certificates giving free dental care, prescriptions, eye tests, glasses, contact lenses, wigs, yep, I said wigs, and travel to medical treatment. University bursaries, scholarships, fee waivers for asylum seekers, discounted Spanish or French lessons from some councils, free bus travel from some councils, free driving lessons from several councils, free sports and leisure tickets and trips, free PlayStation consoles, and, I kid you not, yoga sessions. I'll say that again, yoga sessions, free swimming, group exercise classes and gym sessions, discounts on theatre shows, Home Office clothing packs, which include underwear, socks, t-shirts, trousers, sweatshirts, trainers, winter coats, hats and gloves on arrivals. And yes, a wig, as I previously said, if you so desire. Free mobile phone on arrival and presumably an airtime contract at taxpayers' cost. And, of course, taxpayer-funded legal aid for asylum cases. And there's also, don't forget, Nottinghamshire County Council, I think, that it was disclosed had spent £45,000 in 12 months on McDonald's and Domino's for asylum seekers. And also the one thing missing from this particular list here from the Daily Mail is, of course, trampoline lessons, which we know were given by one particularly generous council on our behalf, because, of course, there is no such thing as council money or government money. It's our money. It is taxpayers' money. Peter Blexley, have you picked yourself up off the floor?
It's quite a gloomy list, but I think I've got some solutions.
OK.
I really do, right? Free cooking lessons. All right, look, scrap the cooking lessons, just sit them in front of a big screen TV in their lovely hotel and make them watch endless repeats of MasterChef or Saturday Morning Kitchen. 2 lamentable BBC shows which are guaranteed to make people want to get out of this country.
So we can make Greg Wallace relevant again?
Yes.
So he does have a use?
Yeah, he can help. He
Great.
can help by getting people as far away from the UK.
Why do we think we're giving them free cooking lessons? I mean, these are 23, 24, 25-year-old men. I mean, I guess it's because the societies, the cultures they come from. Is it fair to say that many of them, if they do come from a Middle Eastern background, have all of this stuff done for them? So we now, as the state of Britain, have to teach them how to cook because they've never bothered learning in Syria, Afghanistan, Iraq, or wherever they hail from.
Quite possibly, but it's astonishing. Free swimming lessons. I mean, really,
on a boat.
The French should have given them swimming lessons.
They come over on a boat
in case their dinghy collapsed.
And they need swimming lessons. Yes, and this, of course, well, I suppose the counter to that is, well, of course, they've got life jackets, and we also know what happens to those life jackets. You know, they're recycled, aren't they? They end up toing and froing across the channel. It seems that the authorities might even have something to do with the fact that when the life jackets presumably get dumped on the shores of Dover, when these people end up here on their luxury boats with extra legroom and an in-boat movie, that those life jackets, Pete, somehow mysteriously end up back in France.
Well, the French demand them back, and I've heard that sometimes when a British vessel, whether it be a Border Force vessel or the RNLI, meet up with the life jackets, with a dinghy, the French demand those life jackets back that they have supplied. They want them back because not only, you know, did we give them £500 million or whatever, they don't want to be spending money endlessly on life jackets. But
what else do we like, Pete?
I've got another solution, right? The free sports tickets, OK? You give me some Buckshee tickets to take asylum seekers to go and watch Queen's Park Rangers, and I guarantee you they'll want to leave this country. They'll go, if that's what I've got to do, right, make them season tickets. So you say to them, like me, you have to go and watch every week, no matter where they're playing, week in, week out, they'll go, do you know what, I don't think Britain's such a great place.
Do you think that would be a
after all."
sufficient disincentive?
Yeah, it would.
Yeah.
They go, oh, well, where else can I go?
Or if they think they've come from a war-torn area, maybe take them to, I don't know, QPR Luton.
Well, we're not in the same division anymore.
Oh,
Luton got relegated again last year, which sort of makes me laugh. Sorry. But
shows what I know about football, which will become increasingly evident as this show goes on, because we will be talking about the Premier League, which kicked off last night with, was it a 4-2 victory, Liverpool over Bournemouth? I know that only because I read it about 25 minutes ago. What else do we like? So free bus travel, free driving lessons. I guess that's so that they ride their food delivery scooters illegally in perhaps more of a professional fashion, is it?
I mean, it's breathtaking, isn't it? I pick up on this mobile phone thing again, and you quite rightly pointed out about, will it be taxpayer funded? What do they call it? The system,
airtime.
The airtime, yeah. Whatever deal, whatever contract you have.
And that's not cheap, is it? What's that, 30, 40 quid times? I mean, how many are coming over, did you say?
And how long are we going to pay that for?
Yeah.
Is it like a lifetime gift, is it?
Yeah. So if anyone wants to do that calculation, by the way, on the basis that there's, where are we, 27,800 migrants have come over just this year.
Moreover, if there's a whistleblower at one of the airtime providers who wants to anonymously contact me and tell the absolute truth, peterblexley.com, I can guarantee you lifelong anonymity forever.
Yeah, in terms of who is paying for these and how many mobile phone contracts there are. Or maybe they're pay-as-you-go. Maybe they get some kind of voucher to go and top up at the local post office wherever they are. Access to food banks. Now, they're getting £49.18 per week from us. And they're also, it seems, again, from social media footage, they, in their 3-star, 4-star hotels, they get access to a restaurant, buffet, breakfast, lunch and dinner. Why do they also need to go and deprive people that are deserving of food from a food bank? How is it justified that they should be allowed to go to food banks and take that food away from British individuals, I wonder?
Look, we shouldn't starve people in this country, but what we should do to these people is detain them. When they come in illegally, they've already committed a criminal offence, because to come into the UK, courtesy of the 2023 Act, through a dangerous route, it is a specific criminal offence, let alone the Immigration Act of 1971, some of which I'm sure would still apply. OK, it's a criminal offence. Stick them in camps, detain them in camps.
And then the reality is, of course, look, we have our hapless politicians, and actually I include the previous government in this. So, you know, whether we go back to the days of Rishi Sunak, remember them, when everyone said they were the worst government ever. Hey, hold my beer, said Keir Starmer. And look where we are now, 13 or 14 months on. The hand-wringing, frankly, from the previous Conservative administrations, all the way from David Cameron up through Boris Johnson, Theresa May and Rishi Sunak, and now Keir Starmer, with regard to how we solve this, the rhetoric, the nonsense verbiage in terms of how they're going to stop this, because they know, of course, that the vast majority of the British public see this problem of illegal and indeed legal migration and the extent of it being a huge problem from a society point of view, from a crime perspective in many respects, and from an economic perspective. So we have that hand-wringing in terms of what the solutions might be. You know, Yvette Cooper variously comes up with all sorts of ideas around, you know, making it illegal to have 81 people in a boat that only takes 80. She's talking now about the 90,000 asylum seekers that are going through the system. She's going to process them quickly, which of course we all know means that that's just going to be an amnesty. But the easiest thing for us to do with one stroke of a pen is not to worry. I mean, yes, internmentship, having these people incarcerated while they're waiting for their asylum process to ensue. All of that applies. You know, having Navy ribs and frigates in the Channel, all of that would be acceptable to me, I can tell you. But all we have to do, all the government has to do, is simply remove the incentives, remove the accommodation and the flat screen tellies, remove the free phones, remove the £49.18 per week, remove the dentistry and the NHS, and stop the encouragement of these people coming here on the basis that they know and their friends know by way of what is then directed through social media from these boat migrants, that these people know is basically gifts. We are a soft touch. We've only got to do that, Peter, haven't we? It's easy. We just take away these incentives and we stop the problem, just like Australia did under Tony Abbott a few years ago.
I doff my cap to you, sir, so eloquently put. Absolutely brilliant.
But it's so simple.
Yes, yes, indeed. But you try telling that to the politicians. Politicians like Yvette Cooper, who only a few weeks ago, when discussing the child rape gang crisis, the scandal of the lack of investigations and so on, actually said that when it comes to the UK, and this is a quote, there will be no hiding place for predators. We know there is an increasing number of these illegal migrants who are committing predatory crimes. We know that. It's a fact. Look at the court lists. Look at the ever-increasing list of people who are getting arrested. The government are providing the hiding place. The hiding place is the hotels that we are paying for.
Literally hiding in plain sight. Sharon Miller wants to ask you a question, Peter, if that's okay. Good morning, Peter. Sharon, I'm here too, by the way. Why is this TikTok migrant still in the UK? Why is he still in a four-star hotel paid for by taxpayers, using iPhones that are paid for by taxpayers? What the hell is going on in this country? What's your answer to that, Peter? Why is he still here?
Because we have pathetic, weak politicians. That's why.
Well, not just weak in terms of not wanting to put their foot down and solve this problem, but of course, you know, there's a question of ideology here, of course, which is that those on the left, and again I include many members of the Conservative Party and the previous Conservative front bench, because many of them were and remain wet, frankly, and uber liberal, ultra liberal, they see migration of all types as beneficial. They think that allowing anyone in, all and sundry in, is good for society. Multiculturalism is good, even though clearly that has not worked. But they also see it as good for the economy. So you've got the false belief that amongst those on the left that this kind of demographic, this influx, this invasion, we should call it what it is, shouldn't we, is good for us. But there's also the politics, the ideology, which of course the same masked Antifa thugs that we see parading around Epping and the Bell Hotel, you know, they effectively are the same people as those on the left in politics that genuinely think all refugees are welcome. Well, I can tell you something. You're not. Not all refugees are welcome. Some, I have to say, that are genuine, and there's a minority here, Pete. Of course, you know, I count those that were fleeing Russian persecution as a consequence of the invasion of the Ukraine. Of course, we should do what we can to help. But dinghy boys that are fleeing simply the fact that there isn't enough money in Syria and they can come here and work as delivery riders with their free mobile phone whilst residing in a four-star hotel in Heathrow. This is blatant economic migration.
Yes, and let's rewind not that far in time to say the mid-90s. Do you know we used to have about 55,000, 50,000, 60,000 per year
net
people coming in? Net migration.
And what is it now?
A manageable figure, a perfectly manageable figure, many of whom integrated, started businesses, raised wonderful kids who became friends of our kids, and all that kind of stuff. All the stuff we bought into, because in the 80s we were taught, don't be racist, accept people of a different skin colour and a different culture, and we're all going to get on fine. And in the main, we did. We did not sign up for any of this. And whilst we focused on boats, let's talk about, like you touched on, lorries, but let's talk about aeroplanes coming in with people.
Well, let's do that after the break.
On moody visas.
Let's do that after the break. We've got to take a break. Yeah, look, migration in the 60s, 70s and 80s were very different because those people came here and contributed. The majority of those that seem to be coming here now are takers rather than contributors. If you want to join in with this conversation, by the way, we are getting lots of calls, loads of texts. I'm going to read some of those out in due course. 0344 499 1000, or indeed you can leave a voice note via WhatsApp. But if you want to text, if it's a bit too early to be talking to us, even though Pete and I have been up since about 3:30 this morning, to give you this delectation, this extravaganza, as it is this morning till 10 o'clock. Yes, 0344 499 1000, or text 87222, but preceded by the word talk. Back after this.
I think this is so damaging to the government that keeps on trying to pretend to be confused at the suggestion that there is such a thing as two-tier justice in our country. And did you notice in the footage that we played just now of that deplorable individual making those comments, and there were a load of people around him clapping and cheering at those comments? It wasn't like everyone went quiet and looked shocked. You know, this was just sort of like, yeah, let's bring it on, folks. Let's talk about slitting throats.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back, 7:21. I'm Russell Quirk, in for Alex Phillips. I'm here till 10 o'clock. Peter Caldwell after me. I'm also back tomorrow. I'm doing 6 till 10 tomorrow. Then I'm on holiday, by the way. I'm going to Crete on Monday because I need a break, don't we all? So, yes, looking forward to that. So I won't see you for a little while. But let's continue the theme of migrants and, yes, the problems that are associated with such. And, Pete, tell us about this story. This is a migrant hotel has turned a pretty village into a no-go zone. This is not Wethersfield in Essex, by the way, where, by the way, the number of migrants at the ex-RAF base in Wethersfield in Essex, near to where I live, they now outnumber the number of people that live in the village itself. But this particular village is heading in the same direction, Pete.
It sounds, from the descriptions, like a beautiful sort of village, if village life is your thing.
Where is it?
Crick in Northamptonshire. And remember, please, everybody, this is an Ibis hotel. So if ever you're thinking or needing a stay somewhere, you might want to think about that particular brand. You might want to avoid it. And find an alternative source of some accommodation. Anyway, so migrant hotel, and guess what's happening? Because, of course, as we know, as we've discussed, these are not detention centres. Curfews cannot be imposed upon the people. So what's happening in this tiny village? There are groups of men hanging around on the streets, in the parks, playing football, making a lot of noise.
And they are almost entirely men.
Yes.
We don't see women and children coming off those boats, do we?
No. No mention whatsoever of the villagers being disturbed by images of kids being pushed on swings by their parents. No. This is men playing football, gathering in groups, being loud, and let's not beat around the bush, speaking in languages that many people will not understand. It can be intimidating, and this is what the villagers are complaining about.
Well, let's read some of the detail here from this story. It's an idyllic village, or was, which has a population of less than 2,000 people. So it's a proper village. This is not a town. This is a tiny village with a few houses that is now being invaded. Let's use that word again because it's true. Inundated by migrants that have been put up in this Ibis hotel. It's apparently a village that is renowned for its thatched houses, marina, and a pretty little cricket club. But residents have told South West News Service that the area has now gone downhill with late-night football matches and, in their words, packs of men roaming the streets. Villagers claim the area now feels overrun by migrants, and some locals say that they are too scared to let their children out after dark after, wait for it, you knew we were going to get to this, yet again, a woman was attacked in nearby Rugby, Warwickshire. So there's no suggestion that the person that has committed that attack is actually in this particular Ibis hotel. We should make that very clear. But asylum seeker Ahmed Mohammed Al-Mahi, 32, fighting age man basically, has been charged with sexual assault and is due to appear at Warwick Crown Court next month. Now, as we always do when it's a live case, we should be very, very clear that Ahmed Mohammed Al-Mahi has not been convicted. He's not gone through the process of the judicial system yet, so innocent till proven guilty. However, you can understand if you are a resident of Crick, if you are now surrounded by hundreds and hundreds of similar male individuals that are causing a bit of a commotion here and there, when you then see in your local paper, Pete, that there has been an attack in nearby Rugby by an asylum seeker, you can be forgiven for joining the dots.
Of course you can. My eldest son and his girlfriend live in Rugby. It's a matter of concern to so many people, the length and breadth of the country, as these people are placed in these hotels, which changes the demographic, the dynamic and the atmosphere and how people feel. This government is fundamentally failing. The previous government fundamentally failed. What is it about politicians in this country? Why are these people so useless? Why can Reeves come in, bang on about a £22 billion black hole and turn that into a £41.9 billion black hole, maybe £50 billion by the end of this term of government? Why is it that they let these people in? Why is it that the NHS is so appallingly run? Why are there so many potholes in the road? Why is the country suffering from a lack of meaningful growth? Why is everything rubbish? Because of the politicians.
Yes.
We deserve better.
We do. And look, we voted them in, I would say, under false pretences. It's very clear to me that what Labour said they would do and what they have done are two very, very different things. In fact, they've done very little, if anything, with regard to what they said they were going to do in their manifesto. They've done lots of things that weren't in their manifesto. So, yes, no, Peter is exactly right. We have a situation where our politicians, probably because they're career politicians, because they don't come from the worlds of policing, law enforcement, business and community, really, they are dyed-in-the-wool wannabe career politicians from the point of university all the way through getting a job at Labour or Conservative central office, the bag carrying, the spads, then the have a little go at a general election, see if you quite like the process. You'll lose the first one, but then we'll get you into a nice safe seat. That's basically the trajectory, the journey of the politicians that adorn our front benches. To say that they are out of touch, Pete, I think would be an absolute understatement on the basis that they have absolutely no idea what it's like to live amongst the intimidation that we are talking about here with regard to Crick or indeed the Barbican, Canary Wharf, Epping or elsewhere. When was the last time we saw a member of the government not only kind of go along to one of these protests, one of these migrant hotels, to make a statement, but even to stand at a lectern somewhere miles and miles away to reassure the public, to talk about the fact that that politician and this government might actually see that this is concerning, that they might agree with the public's concerns. The government, and indeed I'd say the opposition, Chris Phillips included, is the Shadow Home Secretary. You know, he famously, as did Robert Jenrick, popped over to France for a photo opportunity, it's fair to say, only, and then to lament how terrible this situation is, forgetting that they themselves were in government only 13 months ago and allowed this to happen. Yes, we are not blessed with competence, Pete, when it comes to politicians, are we?
And when you talk about a politician espousing how we feel, even when they try to be a man of the people or a woman of the people, you get my drift, they manifestly fail. Look at Lammy just a few days ago.
Can we not?
Fishing with JD Vance.
Without
right?
licence.
OK, last Saturday night on my way home, as I thought about it, I put a post out on X to the Foreign and Commonwealth Office.
Did you have your rod in your hand?
Right, OK, thank you very much. I use both hands for texting, I'm old, right? So I put a text out to the Foreign and Commonwealth Office. I copied Lammy into it, I copied JD Vance into it, and I copied the Environment Agency into it, and I asked, did they have valid rod licences when they went fishing? As a result of my work, Lammy has now reported himself to the watchdog.
So that was you?
Even when they try to be men of the people, they fail because they're surrounded by idiots. Idiots who didn't know you need a rod licence when you go fishing. Fishing, the most popular participation sport in the land, and I love a day's fishing. It's a common person's game. We love it. Politicians try and ape it, and they get it wrong. They are nothing like us. They don't deserve us. What are we going to do?
Well, it's insulting our intelligence to think that David Lammy is a regular angler. He's a regular a lot of things, but a fisherman, I suspect he is not. Let's talk about something else in the last few minutes before I know you've got to go, which is right up your strasser. This is Peter Blexley. I don't know where to start with this. We've got Thames Valley Police and Crime Commissioner Matthew Barber saying that the public should stand up to shoplifters and that failing to intervene makes them part of the problem. Well, I thought that that's why we pay loads of money in tax to a police force. Clearly not. So clearly it's now down to us and that we are part of the problem if we don't jump in and risk, presumably, being stabbed, punched, shot or whatever. So that's the first one. Let me just me allow that to sit with you. But then we've got, by contrast, Katie Bourne, who is the national lead for shoplifting at the pointless role, Katie Bourne, the national lead for shoplifting at the Association of Police and Crime Commissioners. She herself is the Police and Crime Commissioner for Sussex, saying, I kid you not, there is no point arresting shoplifters. Basically what we've got here are two police and crime commissioners that are elected to stand up for us and to hold police chief constables to account, Pete, basically saying there's no point us arresting them, and actually if you're worried about it as members of the public, you can step in and try and stop it yourselves. Is this what we want to be hearing from our police?
Matthew Barber, Tory PCC for Thames Valley, is an idiot. OK, that's quite easily dealt with.
That's clear.
OK, you know, so what? The shoplifting epidemic is our fault, is it?
Apparently.
So we should all join in and stop it. So don't go to football today, everybody. Go and park yourself outside Waitrose or Tesco's or Sainsbury's, etc., etc., etc.
And put yourself in harm's way because the police are too busy eating donuts, presumably.
Yes, and you might just, if you're really unfortunate, get 6 inches of stainless steel between the ribs and it'll end your life. It's not the public's job. Film it. Barber called the public who filmed shoplifting idiots. No, if you see shoplifting, please do film it, then we can force the police into doing something. Make sure you get the culprit's face in the video so they can identify them. OK, and by the way, if you do get yourself involved in shoplifting at Iceland, they'll give you £1 for nominating a shoplifter, pointing out a shoplifter. What utter nonsense. Katie Bourne, right, of course.
She's just as bad. She's also saying, let me just reiterate what Katie Bourne's saying, there's no point arresting them, she says. The jails are full of people that shouldn't be there. Well, criminals, actually, Katie, I would think, and suggest very strongly that criminals should exactly be in prison. And regardless of this poppycock, actually, around rehabilitation, they should be there not only as a punishment and a deterrent, but to keep them out of our way so that they stop offending. So Katie Bourne, I mean, she's a Conservative, for goodness sake, a Conservative Police and Crime Commissioner, basically saying, I've given up.
Well, but she goes on to try and retract a bit of it by saying, you know, or should I say, I am saying, what we need is deterrence. We need arrest. Well, first of all, we need detention by security staff who need to be trained in self-defence and restraint techniques. So that's the first line of defence. Then we need arrest by police officers. Then we need charging by the CPS. Then we need them appearing in court. Then we need them being suitably punished. And if that includes prison, so be it. We've lost sight of everything that used to keep us safe. The criminal justice system is appalling. We really need to reinvent this country if we are going to make it Great Britain, or if we are going to continue on this downward spiral to hell.
Well, and we are part of the way down that spiral, I think. It goes back to what we were saying in the first hour of this show, actually, from 6 o'clock. So I'll just repeat, just in case you've only just opened your eyes this morning at 7:34 as it is. And we were saying that obviously this whole problem of crime and punishment, or rather lack of punishment, obviously it needs political will, but it also needs police officers at a senior level that understand what their obligations are to the public, and actually does, I would argue, the little stuff. It's the whole Rudy Giuliani broken window syndrome back in the 90s, which is if you make sure that you do prosecute vandals, graffiti artists, fare dodgers, I'll declare an interest before anybody tweets and says that I was caught for doing such, but I did have massive mitigation. But anyway, just passing that to one side for a second, but particularly shoplifters. There are now 500,000 shoplifting offences in Britain. They're only the ones that are reported. Of course, there are a lot more. We need police, senior police officers, those in charge, that understand that the public that they serve and that pay them want them to do the whole job. Because if you allow people to dodge fares and to nick one thing after another from their local supermarket, that then becomes an Apple store and a Nike store. That then becomes robbery. That then becomes much more serious and organised. However, Pete, there is an answer, apparently, and I say this tongue-in-cheek, because Richard Walker, who is the chairman of Asylum, now he famously has tried to get into politics and failed a couple of times. I think he tried as a Conservative candidate, unsuccessfully. Then he tried, I think, to defect to Labour in terms of his party colours. That didn't work out very well. But he has come up with the answer. Here we go, everybody. This is the answer. This is Iceland, the high street retailer. He's going to pay customers £1. Wow, what a bounty. A pound to help catch shoplifters in his stores. He says, if you point out a suspected shoplifter in one of my stores, I'll put £1 on your loyalty card. Solved.
He's probably been inspired by police wages. Pay our police more, you get a better quality of candidate. Pay the police more because they need it on the front line. Not the bosses, they already earn fortunes. Get rid of that fluffy, woke, liberal, weak lot. Get a new generation of police leaders who have actually rolled around on the pavement, know what it's like to be on the front line, and then we might start getting a police service that is worthy of its title.
Indeed. I don't think many of you would disagree with that, will you? If you do, or not, if you support what Peter Blexley just said, 0344 499 1000. I've got to say goodbye to Blexley now, I'm afraid. You're off to camp outside Marks and Spencer's to nick a few shoplifters.
Yeah, new pastime, eh? More fun than watching QPR.
Well, look, it's down to us now, according to certain police and crime commissioners. It's up to us to stop shoplifters because the police simply can't be bothered. Peter, thank you very, very, very much indeed. That was a whirlwind of an hour and a half. Hopefully the audience have enjoyed it. You'll be back on Talk, no doubt, very, very soon. And I'll be back after this break.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back, 7:38. I'm Russell Quirk in for Alex Phillips. I was going to say just today, but actually tomorrow as well. I'll be here from 6 to 10 on Talk Breakfast in temporary replacement of Alex Phillips, who is off and away. Hopefully you're enjoying this. Let me know what you think. Keep the calls coming in. There have been lots of them. Thank you. 0344 499 1000, or you can do what lots and lots and lots of people have done. Thank you. And text 87222 plus the word talk with your comments, questions, opinions, whether you agree, disagree, we don't mind, whatever. Yes, keep those comments and texts coming, and of course voice notes also. We love a voice note via WhatsApp 0344 499 1000. Let me know what you think of the show so far. As I say, here till 10 o'clock. Let's talk now to Tobias Ellwood, a name that I'm sure you are all very familiar with, former chair of the Defence Select Committee, so should know a fair bit about what's been happening over the last 12 hours or so with regard to Donald Trump meeting Vladimir Putin. But no deal, Tobias.
No, on a bigger level, two adversaries, nuclear powers with huge differences, meeting face to face is a good thing. But to come away with no deal, Trump rightly should be disappointed, and Putin very much enjoying the limelight. A red carpet welcome, invited out of global isolation, really, treated seriously on by the international community, not least the US president. Putin could not have asked for more, and he walked away with exactly what he wanted, a day on the international stage, but not signing any deal on Ukraine, simply playing along, even promising to host another summit in Moscow, but no progress was made.
I can't
and
imagine.
The talks ended very much earlier than planned.
Tobias, can you imagine Donald Trump and his entourage flying to Moscow? I can't imagine that happening for a second. That was clearly a tongue-in-cheek trolling comment from Vladimir Putin. Do you think this whole thing was just theatre then on the part of Putin and indeed Trump? Was it just a PR exercise?
Well, I think there's something deeper here, which actually suggests he may end up going to Moscow. Trump claimed on Fox News, I think this was 10 out of 10, but he was being naive. I mean, the Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov turning up wearing a CCCP T-shirt, that's USSR in English, showed
it's trolling.
Putin really wasn't ever going to take.
It's absolute trolling.
Completely. But this is my theory here, and I'm very concerned about this, that Trump is using all this as an off-ramp, a way out, very publicly trying to secure a deal as he promised, but making it very, very easy for him then to declare, if no deal is reached, not even a ceasefire, to say, listen, I've tried to get the stakeholders around the table, but they don't want to play, so I'm getting out. And that would leave Europe facing an emboldened Russia alone, but it would then free up Trump in his very commercial approach to then start to do mineral and trade deals with Russia, to bring Russia out of the cold. That is my wider geopolitical concern of where Trump might take this.
So, Tobias, you're suggesting that if this fails, and it might even be designed to fail, it simply opens up the opportunity for Donald Trump to do deals on minerals and therefore do that outside the auspices of sanctions. So you think this might just be something of a commercial nature rather than Donald Trump being at all concerned about the conflict, the casualties, the cost and the war per se?
Yes, I don't think he is concerned about that. He speaks about this, but look how he treated Zelensky in that meeting in the White House back in February. He treated Zelensky as if he was the dictator, as if he was responsible for the war, not Putin. And don't forget, these summits are usually hugely choreographed. 90% of the details are sorted out in advance. This was very, very rushed indeed, put together at the last minute, very, very Trump in its style. And Putin was clearly the winner here. But Trump is more interested in what's best for America. That is his entire approach. He's desperate to keep the economy going. He needs to strike international deals. Russia happens to be, yes, an adversary, but actually, as long as they keep themselves over there and leave America to focus on Greenland, Canada, Panama, and so forth, that's the wider detail that perhaps we're missing here, where Ukraine is a secondary consideration, not realizing, though, that if you leave Ukraine as it is, Putin will be invigorated to then pursue his adventurous interest way beyond Ukraine. And of course, that will then tie up Europe, causing us to be distracted when America might come knocking on our door saying, hey, we need help in another part of the world, but we can't because we're so involved in pushing back on Russia.
But when you're suggesting that if Putin is not beaten, and I can't see how Putin gets beaten, given even though his military is somewhat weaker than it seems we all thought, and he is definitely somewhat and should be embarrassed by that in terms of that weak hand now being shown. The man, of course, has the most gigantic ego, probably even bigger than Donald Trump. So I can't quite see how we beat, whether it be the West, with or without the United States. Surely the only answer here, and I think this was Trump's point in the White House in that fateful meeting, that box office kind of that box office display that we saw a few months ago, Zelensky, rightly or wrongly, has to give something up. He has to give up some land, or this conflict is never, ever going to end, is it?
That is one approach. The wider concern now, comparing this in history, is that that's 1938 all over again. You offer concessions to the bully, and it looks what it is appeasement, and then they simply continue doing it, and that leads eventually to more war. You say, how do you beat Russia? That is the big question that we've never really explored, because we've been so hesitant, so tentative about giving Ukraine the weapon systems they need. And the one thing that Trump could do, and he threatened with this only a few weeks ago, was implement secondary sanctions against Russia or Russian.
But the first
allies.
lot haven't helped at all, Tobias. I mean, the first lot have just been shrugged off by the way. But tougher sanctions really going to make any difference?
They weren't. If sanctions are to work, then you have to actually hit the countries that Russia is then choosing to trade with. So Russia is now choosing to trade oil with a whole host of other countries.
But that's
that
what Trump has
not
suggested.
affected.
That's what Trump has suggested, that when it comes to China,
but he's not going to do it. So he's not going to do it.
He's going to increase tariffs on those countries that are taking Russian oil and gas and then selling it to third parties, basically as a conduit for Russia. So Trump is probably the only person that's talking about doing that.
But he's now stopped doing it, and this is a detail which I think will emerge, is that much of the 3-hour meeting that they had was less about Ukraine and more about what could be explored in the future between the two countries. That, I believe, is what's going to come out. So that means those secondary sanctions will not take place. But you're right, alone, it's not enough. More appropriately, we should have given the weapon systems that will allow Ukraine to push back. And even today, they're not getting those long-range missile systems.
But
we're
Tobias,
not giving them the scale.
Do we really think that giving money and weapons, and as been suggested by Keir Starmer, boots on the ground, I mean, maybe as a consequence of a peace deal, but it was rather suggested, I think, that actually boots on the ground as a precursor to that might be acceptable. Do we really think that that is going to end up with a solution, given that we're dealing with the man that is Vladimir Putin? I mean, what that seems to me, frankly, would just be a huge escalation and would create an even bigger conflict on the world stage than we have now.
Well, let's separate those two out. Boots on the ground only go when you have a ceasefire, and the ceasefire needs to be enforced by a third party. And my time in the military, I did this in a number of places around the world. You don't just leave the two protagonists facing each other. There has to be a stabilization force that then goes into, and that's where Britain, quite rightly, should play a leading role. But back to the point, if we were serious about pushing back on Russia, then NATO or a coalition of the willing would have supported Ukraine. But we blinked. We blinked at the very, very start. I called for NATO troops or a formation of NATO to move into Ukraine prior to the invasion, to make Putin think again.
But they're not members of NATO.
Before he then invaded.
But they're not members of NATO.
Sorry?
They're not members of NATO.
Who are not? Okay,
Ukraine.
but that's right. They're not members of NATO.
But
I
don't
said
you
in
see the
Bosnia,
antagonism that would provoke against Vladimir Putin? If we
so
move,
it's okay. So you're saying it's okay.
We move NATO troops into Ukraine.
To send your tanks in across the border. That is okay.
No, I'm not saying it's
NATO
okay. But what I'm saying
let me finish my sentence. If I may, can I finish?
Sure.
Let me finish my point, and I'll take your point. NATO is there for European security. This excuse that somehow, okay, Ukraine isn't part of NATO. Iraq, Afghanistan, Bosnia were not part of NATO, but because it was part of European or wider global security, it was seen as the right thing to do. Now, had the most formidable, most potent, most military alliance the world has ever seen bothered to then step forward to help a sovereign country that had been invaded in Europe, then this would have been over a long, long time ago. Putin took advantage of our timidity, our weakness, how risk-averse we've become. This would never have happened during the Cold War because any action by the Soviet Union would have had a robust response to it. We've become weak. We've lost that Cold War statecraft.
We have, but Tobias,
conscious of the escalatory ladder, to be able to push back.
Tobias, hang on one second. Now it's my turn. That's all very well in theory, but the problem, as you well know, as an ex-politician and also being in the military, if you escalate by way of antagonising a man like Vladimir Putin by putting NATO troops on his doorstep, which is also one of the reasons he gives for the whole problem he has with Ukraine and the West, because NATO has crept further and further towards the doorstep of Russia, you're antagonising a man that is very, very unpredictable indeed. And effectively, surely you understand and realise that that's provoking potentially a third world war.
And that is the calculation you need to make. And I predict that there will be a wider war in Europe because of the very decisions that have been making at the moment. America is dialing back, leaving Europe on its own. Putin is energized to now move forward, realizing that nobody is willing to stand in their way. Instead, they want to make concessions. This is the biggest war since the Second World War. Who's responsible? Putin. And he's now being courted in America.
Which he'll see as a victory, I understand. Tobias Elwood, I've got to move on now, I'm afraid, because we've got more and more guests waiting. But I appreciate your time, thank you very much, and your perspective, because Tobias Elwood is a man that has been at the thick of this in many, many respects, both in politics and as a military individual. So grateful to Tobias Elwood there. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to be talking to Dr. Rakib Ehsan about Birmingham. Yes, let's do that. I'm Russell Quirk, back after this.
Just shows once again the fundamental issue is we've got to stop these crossings at source. And I've said it before on your show how frustrated I was as a government MP before we lost the election that we couldn't get these measures through to deliver the Rwanda scheme. I think it was the right idea, and it was frustrating that it was opposed at every step in terms of legal opposition and of course from Labour and particularly and therefore in the House of Lords, and it meant we couldn't legislate in the way we had wanted to, and I very much regret that.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Yes, let's talk about Birmingham, shall we? Not just the fact that it is run as a council very, very badly Indeed, it won't surprise you to learn that it is a Labour council. It also probably won't surprise you to learn that it is a bankrupt Labour council. I was just reading here, actually, the council owes more than £2.9 billion to lenders, placing it ahead of Leeds Council, which only owes £2.2 billion, and Woking on £1.9 billion, and so on. Yet despite that debt, despite the fact that it has been declared effectively bankruptcy, I think back in September last year, it seems that its priorities are pulling down Union flags. So the patriotic flag of Great Britain around VJ Day, which yesterday was, where we're commemorating and celebrating the end of the Second World War, time, money, effort, resources have been deployed by Birmingham City Council to take down patriotic British flags. Well, let's talk about this and other things of a Birmingham nature with Dr. Rakib Ahsan, who's a political commentator. Rakib, if I may call you that, how are you, sir?
Yeah, I'm doing well, Russell. How are you?
Yeah, this is, I mean, I don't know what you used word to describe it, really, but I'm going to use the word pathetic, I think, actually. Not just that it is anti-British, particularly the excuse that's been used by Birmingham City Council, which is that these flags are dangerous in some way, whereas apparently having hundreds and hundreds of Palestinian flags adorned across the city are not. But you would think that Birmingham City Council would have other priorities, wouldn't you?
No, absolutely. And I think we have to make the point that Birmingham was a once much admired city by the rest of the world for its gold standard local governance and groundbreaking industrial development. You could even describe it as a jewel in the Industrial Revolution crown. And I think to see it on the road to ruins, largely because it has an incredibly incompetent city council, I think is a crying shame. It's quite a depressing tale. But I think focusing on this scandal surrounding flags, I think what we're seeing here is a city council. I think there's a great deal of ethno-religious tribalism within that city council.
30% Muslim population in Birmingham.
And I think that what happened, it lit up the Library of Birmingham green and white to mark Pakistan Independence Day. It was on the eve of Pakistan Independence Day. And then it doubled down by do with the colours of orange, white and green to commemorate India Independence Day.
And Rakib, did it commemorate VJ Day with lighting up the library in red, white and blue?
Well, to my understanding, I haven't seen evidence of that. But what I have seen evidence of is the City Council justifying this on quite flimsy health and safety grounds, essentially enforced the mass removal of Union Jack flags and St George's Cross.
Humour me for a second. How is a piece of fabric dangerous?
Well, I'm not sure. According to the council, this runs the risk of killing motorists and pedestrians, both of them.
Did they actually say that, Rakib?
Well, this is what they're justifying, this mass removal of flags, which is taking place in areas such as Northfield.
But only if it's a red, white and blue flag, not if it's green, black and red.
Well, and I think this taps into the problem. I think there's far too many of our public institutions, by the way, this goes beyond Birmingham, Russell, where they're more than happy to celebrate and promote their history, heritage and traditions of other countries, especially countries where sizable ethnic minorities originate from, but they're squeamish, they're uneasy over expressions of British identity and English pride, and I think that is a crying shame. And I think that I think for me personally, Russell, if I express my opinion, in England, I think that the only flags that should be flown on public buildings are either those two flags, the Union Jack flags, St George's Cross, and you can also have county flags and flags which have city mottos.
What about pride flags?
Definitely not. It's an ideological flag. And I think that in my view, that is the problem that I've seen on public buildings, for example, the Ukraine flag being flown. Now, I've condemned the Kremlin's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, but even I find that quite uncomfortable. And I think that, but going back to Birmingham, there is also some people making the argument that, well, the flag of Palestine has been flown in various parts of the city.
Well, yeah, but since October the 7th, I mean, which is, we all know what that means, right? This is not just a pro-Palestine statement. You could argue that some people see that as a pro-Hamas statement, that those flags have only gone up since October the 7th, but those flags have not been taken down.
Well, I'll make this point, Russell, that I'm generally, from my personal point of view, I'm generally supportive of the Palestinian cause. And I think there's a humanitarian disaster unfolding in Gaza as we speak. The expansion of illegal settlements in the West Bank.
Yeah, but do you think it's a politics that should be played out in Britain when we have nothing to do with that?
But I ultimately make this point that what we're looking at here is a city council. We know that it's grossly incompetent, but it comes across as deeply prejudicial. Now, there's even been reported in the Daily Mail that the council has been reluctant to remove Palestinian flags without police protection. So I think that kind of tells you the kind of dynamics which are existing in Birmingham, and the fact that the city council has got itself in a right tangle.
Well, they need to pick a side, literally. Look, there's either no flags or all flags, but I would argue, and I think you and I are agreeing with each other here, that when it comes to civic buildings, whether it be in Westminster or local authorities, I would argue it should be mandatory to have the Union flag, or indeed the St George's flag, or obviously whatever's appropriate in Wales and Scotland. I think it should be mandatory, and that should be it, because otherwise, you know, it's literal playing of politics with flags. And of course, yes, as you're describing here in terms of the Birmingham situation, the councils then disappear up themselves, so to speak. Dr. Rakib Hassan, thank you very much indeed. We're going to go to the news now. I will be back after this with more until 10 o'clock. Russell Quirk, this is Talk.
How much, ladies and gentlemen, are fish and chips where you come from? And we'll go to Jason in Crewe.
Jason from Crewe, fish, chips and peas, £7.50. It's the best chippy in England.
Janice in Leeds, go.
Regarding fish and chips, in Leeds it's between £9.50 and £12.75.
Whitby, how much is fish and chips?
3 of us, fish, chips, peas, I think one of us curry sauce, 3 cans of pop, just short of 70 quid.
£70? That's 23 quid a head, man. Even my maths does that. Very quickly, a voice note. Campbell in Scotland, go.
Up here in Vance in the northeast of Scotland, we can get a fillet and a half of haddock with our regular chips for £8 and 10 pence, and it's by far and away one of the best chippies I've ever had.
Kenneth in Surrey, fish and chips, go.
Fish and chips in Ascot, about half a mile from where you used to live, will cost you £12 and 60 pence. Great show. Keep up the good work.
That's why I moved, because you were living there. When was the last time you had fish and chips?
Couple of weeks
How
ago.
much? Where'd you get it from?
I think it was about 40 quid. It was in the Ivy.
Honestly, you really are. For any of you who think he's a man of the people, I nearly said you're a...
Keeping it real.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, good morning. If you're just joining me and us here at Talk, this is Talk Breakfast. I'm Russell Quirk, in for Alex Phillips. Just gone 3 minutes past 8. It's been a fast-moving show. Lots and lots packed in. And another 2 hours to go until I hand over to Peter Cardwell. There have been lots of messages. Thank you very much indeed. Lots and lots of people have texted 87222 and the word Talk. Let me read some of these to you, actually. Richard from Dartford says, what happened to the groundbreaking agreement that Starmer set up with France? One in, one out. Did the agreement drown in the English Channel? I see what you did there, Richard. Well, I guess the same thing has already happened to the one in, one out has happened to the £800 million that we've given the French. we saw, didn't we, this week, that it seems, apparently, that the French police are helping to bus migrants from the inner depths of France to Calais, ready for them to climb onto boats. So that's what France are doing. So I don't think we should trust anything that Keir Starmer and Yvette Cooper announce, and even less any deal with France. I'm afraid to say they're not our friends, are they? And Jeff in West Sussex says, great show, thank you very much. Is it now down to the public to deal with shoplifters? If so, will it be down to the public to stop the boats coming across the channel? I'm just saying. Well, look, I think Jeff makes a good point there, don't you? That in the United States, the border between Mexico and the US, because it was so porous, particularly under Obama and then later with Joseph Biden, the individuals living close by, whether it be in Texas, Nevada, or wherever, not Nevada, Texas, and so on, wherever, New Mexico, that's it, that's the area that I was searching for, they have literally taken that responsibility into their own hands by way of patrolling that border where the authorities had failed to do so. Now, I'm not advocating this as such, but I will say this. I would not be surprised if some people that are concerned about the invasion of illegal migrants via boats into this country, we've already seen and rehearsed earlier on, we said that there have been nearly 28,000 such migrants just on small boats arrived this year alone. We're well over 50,000 since Keir Starmer took office on July the 5th, 2024. I guess whether it's shoplifters or whether it is illegal boat migrants, maybe we would be forgiven for accepting the premise of the public having to do their own thing. Terrible as that is, but if our authorities and our politicians are going to let us down, then maybe that is what we will have to resort to. Well, look, I want to talk now to Tom Slater, who's editor of Spiked Online, but let's just show you this. We're going to be talking about Donald Trump and I'm going to show you this first about the productive meeting that apparently was had with Vladimir Putin overnight. It's there somewhere.
I believe we had a very productive meeting. There were many, many points that we agreed on, most of them, I would say, a couple of big ones that we haven't quite gotten there, but we've made some headway. So there's no deal until there's a deal. I will call up NATO in a little while. I will call up the various people that I think are appropriate, and I'll, of course, call up President Zelensky and tell him about today's meeting.
And this.
We had some good meetings over the years, right? Good, productive meetings over the years, and we hope to have that in the future. But let's do the most productive one right now. We're going to stop really 5, 6, 7,000, thousands of people a week from being killed, and President Putin wants to see that as much as I do.
Well, let's see what Tom Slater makes of all this. Tom, welcome. Good morning. Thanks for getting up early on a Saturday morning.
Morning, Russell.
Did you expect to wake up and see more from Trump and Putin and their soiree last night?
Well, I was quite surprised how little we got. I mean, in terms of that press conference, it wasn't really even a press conference. It was two pretty short statements from the two respective leaders. They didn't take any questions, and everyone was left pretty much in the dark as to what they've been discussing for almost 3 hours during this landmark meeting. I think the one thing we can say for sure is that Putin has come out with this with something of a PR win. I think that's inescapable, having the red carpet rolled out for him, really being able to pose as one of the great power leaders on the world stage. That's just an unfortunate byproduct of this. Beyond that, it's very unclear. The word ceasefire wasn't used. There wasn't any discussion about what any future arrangements for Ukraine would be. And whilst we've heard that they've agreed on a hell of a lot, what those things are, we're still in the dark. So it's very much early days, but it does feel like where the Ukrainians are concerned, they're very distant from these negotiations, very much locked out of them, unfortunately.
So can we be cynical and say that on both their parts, Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump, this was just a PR stunt, good for both men, to be seen, I suppose, from Putin's point of view, it's a victory, isn't it, to get in front of the President of the United States, despite the fact that he is the bad guy in this scenario. So do we think that this was good PR for Putin and certainly good PR for Donald Trump to be seen as the kind of Henry Kissinger of the moment, as in trying to placate matters and bring about a ceasefire and so on? So PR stunt or helpful intervention on the part of Donald Trump?
I mean, there is obviously substance why they're meeting. I mean, it's quite clear that the war has ground to a pretty grim kind of attritional stalemate where Russia is slowly gaining more and more territory. This was going to come to a head at some point, I suppose. There are also many other things they were discussing during that 3-hour meeting. I think it's worth stressing, Russell, that they mentioned it at that press conference, things that they might cooperate in terms of in the Arctic, in terms of investment, in terms of trade and so on. These are things that both sides are quite keen to talk about and almost to pretend as if that business of the horrific invasion of Ukraine was a kind of side point. But it does flatter both of their views of themselves as the kind of great power leaders deciding the world's affairs. It's just that you can't help but feel the injustice on the Ukrainian side, where many thousands of miles away they're continuing to die and have their lives ravaged because of the fact that you had this imperialistic aggression committed against them. So there's more than PR to it, certainly, but I think we've only really walked away with the images and the optics given what thin gruel we were given at that press conference.
We're seeing here obviously both men walking down the respective steps of their aeroplanes, having kind of no doubt coordinated their arrival to walk down the steps both at the same time. I'm surprised rather than shaking hands that they didn't kind of chest bump, Tom. That would be the sort of thing that you would expect from, bearing in mind that Vladimir Putin very, very famously in his early days as president was photographed, with no top on the back of a horse. I mean, talk about make a statement. Donald Trump, of course, hasn't quite got to that yet, but I wouldn't put it past him, frankly. Do you think, though, that, despite the egos and this being, some would say, an absolute PR stunt, that actually, to your point, in terms of what else was talked about in that meeting, a lot of it would have been, I guess we would say, commercial in terms of minerals, land and so on. I mean, we know what a great negotiator and deal maker Donald Trump tells us all that he is. He's even written a book about it, apparently, which I have to say I haven't read. I don't know about you. But do we think that this boils down to, from Trump's point of view, and maybe the reality, that it is all about the pounds, shillings and pence, the dollars and the rubles in terms of what is negotiated commercially?
I think Trump's very keen to move the discussion onto that. It's almost like the question of Russia's invasion of Ukraine is a kind of hindrance to being able to make precisely the sort of deal.
Well, don't worry about all the bodies. Let's talk about oil and diamonds.
There is a strong element of that. I mean, probably he would say that he's trying to use these things as a kind of carrot in these negotiations to try and incentivize Russia to give ground on certain key issues. But I think the problem is that from what Trump has said, and certainly from what a lot of the people around him have said, there is a bit of a fundamental misunderstanding as to why this war began in the first place. Yes, there are long-running concerns within Russian society about NATO expansion, security or whatever, but when you get to the point where you're rolling the tanks into a neighbouring country, when you're trying to displace their government, when it's so clear that the villain of the piece here was the Russian imperialist aggressor rather than plucky little Ukraine, that has never fully landed. And even in recent days, we've seen Trump continue to at least kind of look both ways on who is to blame in this conflict. And I think that can't help but shape how we approach these negotiations.
Yeah, I guess, look, we should think less about who's to blame, because that's a never-ending spiral of debate, and more about the solution. And actually, whenever I presented on Talk, whether it be today or indeed yesterday, I do try to extract from the people I talk to, whether it's expert guests like yourself on politics, or indeed the likes of Tobias Ellwood, of course, who I was speaking to a few minutes ago, or callers, what is the solution here? Now, we heard from Tobias Ellwood, I don't know if you heard earlier on, that he thinks that what we should have done in the past is to basically fund the Ukraine more, put boots on the ground potentially, certainly provide them with more weapons in an effort to face off against the might of Russia and indeed Vladimir Putin's ego. I put it to him earlier on that effectively is tantamount to just encouraging a third world war. What's your view on that? Do we give in, or do we give in, big inverted commas, to Putin in terms of conceding some territory from Zelensky's point of view, or do we arm the Ukraine to the teeth and the West go even further and more blatantly to its rescue by way of actually being involved on a face-to-face military basis? Because I can tell you what I think, and that the latter would be catastrophic.
No, I tend to agree, and I think, with all due respect to Tobias Ellwood, I mean, what he's proposing is just never going to happen, aside from anything else. I mean, as you say, it's fraught with peril. You are talking about bringing various kind of NATO countries right up to Russia's border. There's also just no appetite for a direct confrontation with Russia. I think we've seen that over the course of this conflict. Even if the European powers, who are very good about making statements and tweets and doing photo ops about how much they support Ukraine, they're struggling to protect their own borders, let alone anyone else's. A lot of European armies, including our own, are basically 5 blokes and a packet of quavers at this point. Like the kind of sabre which seems to accompany this discussion, I think is aside from the risks that are involved in it, as you rightly say, aside from the fact that there is no domestic appetite for boots on the ground in Ukraine democratically, it's just a bit of a fantasy, to be perfectly frank. So I think really what the answer is here is to support Ukraine to build into building up its own army, its own defences. That seems to be the kind of the position that we're going to find ourselves in.
Yeah, there is an irony, isn't there, Tom, that Keir Starmer tries to grandstand and also presumably wants to be in line for the Nobel Peace Prize that Donald Trump has got his eye on, and talks about borders and conflict and so on, yet famously is the politician in this world, on this planet, that cannot control the borders of the country that he presides over. Even other European countries now, Germany, Greece and others, are starting to understand that borders need to be controlled, but that memo has not landed on Keir Starmer's desk as yet. Let's talk about the other thing that is important to talk about, which is the Ricky Jones situation from yesterday. I broke that news yesterday as the court announced the not guilty verdict that Ricky Jones has, despite calling those of us on the centre-right that are protesting about the broken Britain that we're seeing envelop in front of us, he calls us Nazi fascists and says that we shall have our throats cut and die. That apparently that is okay, and that the jury at Snaresbrook Crown Court yesterday agree that it's okay. Now, which side do you fall on? Do you think that was, despite the jury verdict, incitement to violence, or, and I have to say I have some sympathy with the following view, that actually it is his right to an opinion and it's a matter of freedom of speech?
Well, I think that ultimately this was the right endpoint. Whether or not it raises other questions, which I'm sure we'll get into, is absolutely fine. But I think ultimately what we've learned over the course of the past year is that we're in a bit of it's an unpleasant situation for people to face potentially quite long prison sentences for something stupid they might have said in the heat of the moment. I think when it comes to incitement to violence, which, to be absolutely clear, is not a freedom of speech matter, you have to draw that line very, very tightly. It's actually not drawn particularly tightly in our own law, but I think generally speaking, you're talking about something which is both intended and likely to cause imminent violent action. In this particular instance, he was addressing essentially an anti-racist counter-protest, which wasn't countering anything at all, because the supposed fascists they were countering didn't actually materialise, as you'll remember, in Walthamstow that day. He clearly got ahead of himself. He reportedly deleted those particular comments from his own clip that he put out later. Does it excuse what he said? Absolutely not. Does it make it raise questions about his own morality and so on? Absolutely.
And whether he should be a councillor or not, bearing in mind he's still a councillor, albeit had the Labour whip suspended. I mean, do his residents that have elected him think that he's fit to serve them? I mean, should perhaps he be asked to stand down as a local elected representative on the basis that he thinks it's okay to stand in the street talking about and advocating, as he did with regards to that verdict, that his political opponents should have their throats cut?
I think that's exactly who should judge him. It's his own electors, it's his own local Labour Party. Those are perfectly legitimate things to ask of someone who's supposed to be representing you. Do you really want them running around saying things like that? But when it comes to the law, I think this is a reminder of the fact that when we are dealing with kind of speech-related crimes as we are here, pleading not guilty is often the wiser route. Throw yourself on the mercy of a jury of your peers rather than some kind of imperious judge who is much more likely to throw the book at you, I would argue.
Well, and also may have had political pressure applied. As I was rehearsing earlier on with Peter Blexley, it seems that when it comes to the likes of Lucy Connolly, who of course is getting towards the end of her outrageous 31-month prison sentence, bearing in mind the difference, as we also discussed earlier on, is that she pled guilty rather than going through a jury trial. But also Peter Lynch, who of course was also encouraged, coerced, enticed, if you like, to plead guilty, ended up in prison and killed himself as a consequence of that situation. So, as I said to Blexley earlier on, I think the big question here, Tom, is getting to the bottom of the advice that was given to some of these protesters that have ended up being incarcerated. Who were those lawyers? Who was paying them? And whether via the CPS or otherwise, there was pressure put on those lawyers to suggest to Lucy Connolly, Peter Lynch and many others that they really must plead guilty, because otherwise the consequences of being on remand while they waited for a trial, if they did plead not guilty, were much more serious than simply pleading guilty and ending up being better off because of it. Don't we need to get to the bottom of where that advice came from, and indeed whether there was pressure from the top? And when I mean the top, I do mean, the Attorney General, who we know was involved with Lucy Connolly's sentence, and Keir Starmer, who of course is no stranger to the Crown Prosecution Service, having run it years ago. I mean, do we think there's a smoking gun here, that politicians have intervened here to ensure that these political opponents, as arguably Lucy Connolly, Peter Lynch and others were, that they sought to encourage the judiciary to give them a harsher sentence than otherwise they might have otherwise been given?
It's almost certainly a mix of things. I mean, having looked at a lot of these cases and having interviewed a few of the people who've been dragged through the kind of post-Southport speech criminal mania, it's a mix of things, one of which is just kind of plain old incompetence on the part of duty solicitors. I'm sure they're not all like that, but I've seen cases in which they didn't even look at the evidence that had been presented in terms of the post that they had made on social media or what have you. So there's definitely part of that there. There's also going to be an array of kind of perverse incentives towards, within the system to try and just plead guilty, get things moving. We've got a lot of people coming through. That can often play a role, but we can't ignore the fact that the message was coming from the top, from Keir Starmer, from the Director of Public Prosecutions. You had social media accounts, government social media accounts saying...
And the Attorney General.
You post. The Attorney General, of course, and you also had it being made abundantly clear, essentially a political atmosphere, shall we say, being created, that made it clear that alleged hate speakers would be made an example of as much as hateful rioters. That can't help but have an impact on the atmosphere, on decisions being made, even if it's not direct, you go and do this. That clearly has a knock-on impact on justice being done or not being done, and I think we'd be naive to ignore that.
Yeah, and indeed the question of bail, because of course Ricky Jones was initially remanded but then applied for bail and got it, so he had a successful bail hearing, whereas Lucy Connolly and her lawyers applied, I think, twice for bail, and that was refused. So we'd have to ask the question, was there political pressure applied there? Now, as I understand it, I was watching there's a fantastic legal mind on all of this, by the way, which is Daniel Shen Smith. Check him out on YouTube, actually, the Black Belt Barrister. He's already put up a YouTube video explaining the intricacies legally of sentencing and the whole kind of judicial process, but particularly when it comes to Lucy Connolly and the fact that she perhaps should have been granted bail, because you only don't get granted bail if you're either seen as a flight risk, or it's a particularly serious offence, or the third limb, if you like, is that there is a risk that you will tamper with witnesses. Now, it doesn't seem that from the point of view of Lucy Connolly, any of those three tests were met, yet still, not once but twice, Lucy Connolly was not granted bail. There is something distinctly fishy about that.
Oh no, absolutely. There's something also distinctly fishy about the fact she still hasn't been granted a temporary release from prison, despite the fact that she seems to meet all of those criterion. That's something which, if you look at the Telegraph's reporting on this, they've suggested that quite explicitly that's because of the fact that they're concerned about media interest. If she's let out too early, that shouldn't come into.
But does it mean, Tom, that she's a political prisoner, isn't she?
Well, I think it's difficult because political prisoner, I think, evokes a certain kind of clear sense of kind of opponent of the government being locked up by
That's
fear.
exactly what's happened.
But in this, I think what we're talking about here is something which we've ended up with that, but by a slightly more, shall we say...
Well, it might be thinly veiled, but I'm putting it to you that Lucy Connolly is a political prisoner. It's plain and simple.
Well, I think then we'd also have to kind of ask questions about the other people who were locked up during the Southport moment, who were on the other side of this debate, shall we say. There were people who were serving prison sentences for putting out videos, pretending to run away from far-right rioters. There were people who were put in prison during that moment for, posing with weaponry and saying they were going to go after far-right thugs and so on. All I'm saying, what we can all agree on is that...
But most of those weren't arrested. We saw the sites in
those
Birmingham.
Two people were convicted.
Yeah,
so
but...
I'm not saying that's the lion's share of what we're talking about.
Yeah. But it does seem...
There's got to be an element of, just...
No, but there is a disproportionality here, for sure. And the two examples that are the most prominent here are Ricky Jones, who got bail, and Lucy Connolly, that didn't.
Mm-hmm. And as we've been talking about there, the distinction between those two is one pleaded guilty, one pleaded not guilty. Now, I think the key part of the issue here, which we've already touched upon...
But sorry, pleading guilty should be a mitigating fact. I mean, pleading guilty when it comes to sentencing guidelines is a tick. That is a benefit. So if anything, the fact that Lucy Connolly was going to plead guilty should have gone in her favour when it comes to a bail hearing.
Oh, no, absolutely. And that's what I think is the core of this issue, is what obstacles were... First of all, what obstacles were put between Lucy Connolly pleading not guilty And the fact that she was remanded in custody, the fact that all of this, the fact that she was given the distinct impression that she could be remanded in custody for a very long time, therefore adding to that pressure of let's just get this over with, I'll get back to my family quicker, didn't pan out that way. Also the kind of questions around bail, the questions about the legal advice that was given, what obstacles, as I say, was put between her and the path that might have led to her receiving a far more lenient sentence or even being let off by a jury. That's where I think we've really got to focus down, because that's where a lot of the injustice in this particular case clearly lies, I would argue.
Yeah, well, look, she'll be out fairly soon, not before time, in my view, and many others should not have been incarcerated in the first place, certainly should have not have been coerced into a guilty verdict. What a mistake that was, but obviously she's not the only one. We heard an account actually from Peter Blexley earlier on, didn't we, that the son of a friend of his was in a very, very similar situation based on protests in Westminster last year, and luckily took advice and not only pled not guilty, but managed to get the whole thing thrown out before it even went to trial, because of course he'd been arrested and charged completely and utterly inappropriately. Right, Tom, thank you very much indeed, as ever. We're going to take a break now. We're going to be back with Head to Head, which I think is the point where I can sit back for a few minutes and just watch two people rowing with each other. So buckle up, it's 8:24. We'll be back after this.
Just shows once again the fundamental issue is we've got to stop these crossings at source. And I've said it before on your show how frustrated I was as a government MP before we lost the election that we couldn't get these measures through to deliver the Rwanda scheme. I think it was the right idea, and it was frustrating that it was opposed at every step in terms of legal opposition and of course from Labour, and particularly and therefore in the House of Lords, and it meant we couldn't legislate in the way we had wanted to, and I very much regret that.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back, 8:27. It is that time. It is Saturday morning. This is Talk Breakfast. It's the head-to-head. This is something that I've been very much looking forward to. I'm delighted to say I'm joined by Reem Ibrahim and Luke Hilliard. Reem, of course, Communications Manager at the IEA, and Luke Hilliard, Director of the High Pay Centre, encouraging high pay. I'm with you 100%, Luke. Thank you very much indeed. Anyway, I am now, he's horrified already. I'm going to step back now. I'm literally just going to throw the grenade in every now and again and have Reem and Luke, well, just debate, I suppose, which I'm sure they're very, very adept at. First of all, though, let's just watch this clip just to get us going, shall we? It's there somewhere. I'm going to keep saying this. Guys, what's going on? Wake up, have another coffee. We need the clip.
Reform and the Conservatives only want to talk the UK economy down. But last year, Labour promised that we would have the fastest growth in the G7 in the UK, and that's what we've delivered. In the first half of this year, we now know, because of today's data, that the UK grew faster than the US, and France and Germany. We've had 5 interest rate cuts since the election, wages are growing faster than prices, and we've secured 3 landmark trade deals which are good for businesses and good for all of us. This government is making the progress that we need to turn our economy round. Of course, there's more to do, but we've got to stick on this path so that we can get living standards rising across the country for everyone.
OK, Dan there, thank you for that, Dan, defending Labour's record. I suppose as a Labour MP you'd rather have to. Let's talk about that then. Luke, do you want to kick off with this? I guess you are supportive, in agreement with the Labour wonderful economic record in the first 13 months of their tenure?
I'm certainly not here as the Labour Party spokesperson, and I think it's pretty clear we're not in the throes of a golden age for Britain. But equally, I do think there is some merit in what Dan was just saying. And I think at times we're quite we're a self-deprecating people. We've got, we don't like to sort of big ourselves up too much. But I think some of the sort of doomsterism, the gloominess about the UK economy is going a little bit too far. I think you also have to put Labour's record in an international context, as the clip we just showed did. We have had the highest growth in the G7 in the first half of the year. 0.6% growth in the US, 1% in the UK. Those aren't like brilliant figures, but that kind of says a lot about the kind of global economic context and how difficult things are at the moment. So I think it certainly wasn't a golden inheritance for Labour. Things are getting better in a lot of ways. If you look at the business surveys of FTSE 100 CFOs, Britain's risen to the top as a place, as a favoured destination for investment. CFOs are increasingly confident about the UK economy. So I think, it's important to be balanced about these things.
But
and
generally,
I think
it's pretty rosy.
I think I'd say it's not pretty rosy. I think there's some green shoots, and I think some of the doomsterism is overdone.
I find this absolutely astonishing.
Rima, could I say green shoots
rosy.
or a load of weeds?
Absolutely not. Not just weeds, complete and utter destruction. I mean, public spending as a proportion of GDP is 44%. It's about to get to 50%. Current levels of public spending are completely unsustainable. And what the government has chosen to do is increase taxes in some of the most damaging ways. We saw, for example, over the last 3 months, there are 44,000 less job vacancies. We know that these things have a huge impact on the economy as a whole, because effectively, where the government have increased employers' national insurance contributions, they've made it more expensive for employers to employ people, and shock. The consequences of that are that there are less vacancies available, there are less people in employment. Between 16 and 64-year-olds, the working age population, only 21% are economically inactive. They are not working.
So 200,000 people have lost their jobs since Labour took power. 16,000 millionaires leaving Britain. Luke, I mean, you're not going to lament that, because I know what your background is. But they are employers. They are well created. They do pay tax.
The 16,000 millionaires figure has been quite effectively debunked. I mean, it's
research from Henley Associates.
Yeah, but exactly. The research, you want to take a look at this. It's research basically looking at people's LinkedIn profile. It doesn't account for people
actually saying they're leaving.
Well, people changing their destination on LinkedIn. It's it's a tiny, it's sort of 0.0% of millionaires. Even if they were, leaving.
No. To be clear, you're absolutely right about the Henley and Partners study. But to be clear, the point is we don't know how many millionaires are leaving.
Well,
that's the point.
But in fact, here in today's times, fewer non-doms may have fled tax clampdown than expected. So for all the stories about how many people were going to leave have actually, based on anecdotal evidence, the data from what's been paid to HMRC is actually showing. There is this payroll data in HMRC reported in today's Times newspaper. It's in yesterday's Financial Times.
Let me just be the adjudicator here. A headline in the Times that uses the word may, that is not data.
No,
that is not a statistic.
It is. There's data here in the report saying that the number of people who have left Britain as a result of the tax. No, it's saying is fewer than expected. And yes, people have left. People have the expectation was the HMRC projections, which are nothing to do with Henley and Partners. It's the HMRC.
As you've just said,
it's the HMRC. Sorry, but this is an important thing. This is the HMRC projections of how many people would leave as a result of the changes to the non-dom tax regime.
Let's just
They've said
leave
that some
aside
people
for a second.
leave.
Let's just leave aside. Hang on one second. Let's just leave it. I'll come back to you in a sec, Reen. Let's just leave aside the fact that we think so. Millionaires are all staying, so they think everything's fantastic and rosy, and they're not persecuted. They don't feel oppressed by Rachel Reeves' tax regime.
I don't think many millionaires feel oppressed. I think they feel pretty good about themselves.
Perhaps why some of them believe. But let's leave the debate for a second in terms of how many. The reality when it comes to the economy, despite the gaslighting from Dan there, in the clip, and Rachel Reeves yesterday and so on, is that 200,000 people have lost their jobs. The GDP growth statement yesterday was absolutely gobsmacking from my point of view, on the basis that GDP growth annualised in Britain is 1.2%. That is a matter of fact. In the US it's 3%, China it's 5%. Growth in Q2 2025 at 0.3% was less than half what it was in Q1. So the fact that Dan there, Rachel Reeves and others are saying, hey, look at us, we're growing fantastically well. The reality is Q2 growth was 50% worse than Q1 ring.
And we're also doing better in comparison to what the US is doing in that 3 months because of Trump's tariffs, which are absolutely abysmal and wrecked the economy. But we have to be very clear about this. Just because we're doing not as bad as a certain other country in the space of 1 quarter, as you've just outlined there, Russell, growth annualised, we're still doing significantly worse, and this has been long term.
We're a fag paper away from recession.
Yeah.
Well, I think, hey, we can all have a point of agreement here, because I think clearly as I said, it's not an economic golden age.
Is it all because of the black? Because of the black hole?
But I think the international figures are relevant, because it shows that the global economy isn't in a great place, and it is a difficult time for any country to be generating economic success.
I don't buy this argument. I don't buy this argument that economic growth is just something that happens if we just wait until global stability occurs. Economic growth occurs because of capitalism, because of businesses, because of free exchange. It is the productive parts of the economy. What we have in this country is a government that is taking up 44% of the economy. That is an extortionate amount of money, and we are continuously taking more and more money from people. Now, the reason why I'm really concerned, Russell, is that the tax rises that we expect to occur at the end of this year at the October budget are not going to be the last ones, because even if we raise taxes to fill the current budget deficit, we are still going to have to increase taxes year after year unless something drastically changes. We need to drastically cut down the size of the state. I want a Javier Milei style afuera. Let's abolish
where
the department.
GDP growth is 8% in Argentina, by the way.
Let's abolish the Department for Culture, Media and Sport. Let's get rid of the BBC. Let's get rid of the NHS.
A bonfire of departments.
Absolutely, because these are unproductive sections of the economy. We can have a free market economy in which people have jobs, the economy is growing, and there are actually vacancies where people can feel as though they have a stake in society. This is socialist Britain, and that's why people feel poorer.
Luke is horrified. Luke, can you tax your way to growth?
Well, I think I wouldn't agree with a lot of what Rima just said. I'm quite in favour of the NHS. I think most people in Britain are in favour of it.
But Rima hasn't said that she's not, or that's part of...
I'm not in favour of the NHS.
Different argument.
I believe that every other European healthcare system, like social health insurance models, Germany, Sweden, the Netherlands, Denmark, other European countries that have better healthcare systems. Singapore, I think, is a pretty good example.
Let's keep focused on the economy.
The point is, we don't need the government to do everything just because we all like healthcare.
No, the question here, my question, Luke, was, can you tax your way to growth?
Well, actually, Rima says that the 44%, or pick a random figure in the end, say the state is too big at that size. Many countries that are more prosperous than the UK have a larger state. Some that are more prosperous have a smaller state. If you look at the countries that are generally heralded to have the highest standard of living in the world, the Nordic economies, Sweden, Denmark, Norway, they have a bigger state than the UK, and they spend a lot more on things like social welfare.
Regulation. This is causation and correlation. There's significantly less regulation. They are much more
stronger much stronger trade unions, much higher taxes on the rich.
No minimum wages.
Can I just throw another grenade in?
Sweden has no minimum wage.
Lady and gentlemen, can I throw another grenade in? Wealth tax, yes or no, Ring?
Absolutely abhorrent suggestion. Wealth taxes will drive thousands of people out of
banging
this
the
country.
desk, Luke. She's
They
banging
will.
the desk.
These wealth taxes, look, in the 1990s there were about 12 countries in the world that had wealth taxes. Now there are about 3 or 4,
Has it ever
depending on
worked?
how you define it. No, because
of the
what
Laffer
you
curve.
have is a millionaire exodus. Absolutely, the Laffer curve. Should we explain the Laffer curve? Just because we increase the amount of taxation doesn't mean we increase the amount that the Treasury actually raises. And there is a point, there's a sweet spot, the sort of top of the Laffer curve, in which you can raise the maximum amount of money from the economy. No government in this country has increased taxes above about 37%, which is where we are at the moment. So we are now going to start to see us get towards the other side of the
I don't know if
Laffer
that's
curve.
correct. I think that the general consensus
No, it's true.
on the
No
Laffer curve, as Rima, let's be measured about this. Rima is completely correct. Obviously, if you have a 100% tax rate, no one's going to pay it. If you have a 0% tax rate, there's not going to be any tax. Somewhere in between is the right spot. I think most research generally suggests that the right spot for maximising revenue is a little bit higher than.
So do you just disagree on the point at which the Laffer curve
exactly,
should be set?
yeah, exactly.
So, but do you not agree that the wealth tax argument is just the politics of envy?
No, I don't agree with that. I think it's the politics of pragmatism. Some people have loads of wealth, vastly more than they need to reward or incentivise success. I don't disagree that we need to reward and incentivise business success and enterprise. Many people who hold vast amounts of wealth have never done anything in their lives, have never contributed any.
The morality of the situation.
But they have earned
the morality of the. What about the morality of the
Guys.
situation? What about the morality of the situation of some people living in being born into appalling poverty, having no chance in life, and other people being born into appalling wealth, never having to do anything, never having to do anything, and yet living.
It's the end of round one, ladies and gentlemen. In the blue corner, Reem Ibrahim, and in the I guess the red corner, Ish Luke Hilliard. We're going to be back after this for round 2. Buckle up again.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
I've got many. Ladies and gentlemen, so I have to tell you that even though these two are going at each other, they're just taking selfies in the studio here. Reem and Luke, they're the best of friends, it seems, but perhaps not ideologically. Talking of which, let's discuss polling, shall we? Now, polling is always a dangerous, dangerous game. Some people say, of course, when they're behind in the polls, oh, polls mean nothing. And of course, when they're ahead of the polls, which Reform, by the way, definitely are at 31%, according to the latest poll from Find Out Now, which was taken a couple of days ago. Then, of course, they'll say that that's totally and utterly indicative. Let me just read out what the scores on the doors are. This is, yes, as I say, Find Out Now, latest voting intention. So I guess this is more of a Westminster thing than anything else. Reform, 31%. Labour, 19%. Neck and neck with the Conservatives on 19%. Liberal Democrats, remember them, 12%. The Greens, we'll come back to that in a second, Luke, 10%. Other, 6%. Do we assume that other is the Corbyn, your party, whatever it's called, maybe?
And some independents, I'd assume.
And some people in Wales that apparently vote, 1%. So I'm joking, Welsh people. So what we see here is the Reform are down 1%, Labour are down 1%, the Tories are up 3%. Now, I have seen some stuff on social media, Luke, this week, where lots and lots of people in the Conservative Party are now putting this down to Kemi Badenoch and how wonderful she is, and now she's starting to get some traction. Bear in mind she's been leader for how long? About 18 months? Don't think we've heard a policy from her yet. Lib Dems flat at 12%.
Less than a year. She's been leader for less than a year.
Oh, she must
have
have
after the
done.
election.
Well, just after. Yeah, but she was nominated, so I suppose the formality was, I think, November last year, wasn't it? The Greens up 1%. So it looks like the Conservatives and the Greens are doing well, Luke.
Well, I mean, the claim about Badenoch is interesting, I would say.
And wrong, do you think?
It's the height of summer, lovely weather, people are on their holidays. I'm a nerd who's interested in politics. I'm not aware of anything Kemi Badenoch has said or done in recent weeks. I'd be extremely surprised if it's registering with the general public sufficiently to improve their opinion polls. Generic, again, you know, kind of passes me by when I do see him doing something. It doesn't resonate with me personally, but he does seem to be. I don't think he's using. I'm probably not his target voter, right? He does seem to be using social media effectively, for better or worse. Perhaps that is having some impact.
He's electioneering, isn't he? He's a wannabe next leader of the Conservative Party, isn't he?
Well, so the rumours say, don't they, Russell?
Well, you're quite close to those rumours, I suspect.
Well, I think it's interesting when we're thinking about what the leadership election last year represented, because it was quite exciting to be, you know, sort of around the Conservative Party and hearing what was going on, because it was really an ideological battle for the future of the right. And what I find interesting is Reform haven't necessarily performed in the same way that I think a lot of people had hoped. I definitely
at 31%.
Well, no, I mean in terms of this is all me talking. I mean in terms of policy, right? So things like the energy policies in which they said they want to ban battery energy storage systems, they want to tax green energy, they want to, you know, all of this is big government interventionist policy, and at the same time saying they want to nationalise steel. I mean, Reform on economic policy are basically left of Corbyn. So I think for a lot of people within the Conservative Party, they're sort of seeing what's unfolding with Reform, and they're seeing what's going on, and actually, yes, they might be conservative, so to speak, on things like immigration and cutting government waste, but actually on economics, what I think matters to a lot of people, they are actually not necessarily traditional Conservatives.
Didn't Nigel Farage make a comment that alluded to wanting to be to the left of the Conservatives?
I believe so. Perhaps he did. I don't know.
So.
I mean, it's
a remarkable thing to say to your audience. Now, I guess the problem, the challenge really for Reform is to hold on to this lead and not to mess it up, and maybe that's why they aren't being particularly forthcoming with policy.
Can I just add one thing to this very quickly? I had been speaking to a girl who was very interested in, you know, being a member of the Conservative Party, and she did join because of Kemi Badenoch, and said, and this is just again one anecdotal example, but she'd said, you know, Kemi is the only person on the trans issue to have said, you know, an adult human female is what a woman is. That's the definition. She has been very, very clear about this from day one, early on, even when some of her colleagues were still saying to the contrary. And then you had recently the Reform, I think it was Justice Advisor, saying perhaps trans women should be allowed
the prison spokesperson.
Prison spokesperson,
Kate,
there we go.
Forget her surname, yes. That it's sometimes okay for men in wigs, I mean, my words, not hers, to be in women's prisons.
Yes, and I think that, you know, the little things like that do matter.
Reform then distance themselves. I asked Rupert Matthews on this channel actually that same day if he agreed with that, and he didn't seem to want to answer very decisively.
Exactly.
But we have heard since from the likes of Sarah Pochin and Nigel Farage that is not a Reform Party policy.
But it hasn't been as forthright as I think Kemi Badenoch has been. Now, this isn't necessarily an issue that is at the top of my list, but it was interesting speaking to another woman who was interested in politics and was saying, you know, Kemi is the only person in politics that has actually stood up for women's rights.
But she also did vote for increased migration. But anyway, let's just sweep that under the carpet for a second. I want to talk about Jeremy Corbyn, Luke.
Yeah.
Because Corbyn is not mentioned specifically in this new party of his and Zara Sultana with regard to, what is it called? There's been some disquiet over whether it's going to be
it's not actually got a name.
It's still not your party. Zara Sultana's recommendation is that it be called the Left Party. On the basis that kind of does what it says on the tin. I actually think that if you look at public opinion polling and stuff, a lot of the stuff they were saying, a lot of the stuff that was in Labour's 2017 manifesto, when they did well, not so much the 2019 manifesto, is actually pretty common sense stuff that's down the middle in terms of where the public is, nationalising various utilities.
More government, big government.
Water. I mean, water's going so brilliantly in the private sector.
Because of Ofwat and all the enormous
But some of us are
regulations
also old enough to
and lack of
remember
competitive
nationalisation of trains and utilities back in the 70s. It was not pretty, Luke, I've got to tell you. It run very bad. I mean, honestly, I can't think of anyone worse to run utilities and train services than civil servants.
Well, I mean, go to any European country where they have lovely clean trains that run on time and look a lot better
Causation,
than
correlation, Luke. Where is the evidence?
It shows that you're saying the government can't. You can't. You're saying the government can't run trains, and then you look at other countries where the government runs trains and they work really well.
That's absolutely fine. Let's look at what
can I just say,
makes
Reem, sorry, the Nazis ran trains on time famously.
Yeah.
Are we suggesting that that's a political
Mussolini,
philosophy?
Well, I think that's a slightly bizarre intervention. I'm making the. I don't think it's necessarily the case that every government,
every regime that runs trains on time is the correct one.
Can I just make one very small point here, which I think is interesting because of the differences between Luke and I and our kind of ideological stances. Luke says it's great when the government runs something, we just need the right type of government. And I'm saying, doesn't matter what colour tie they wear, I want the government out of our business. And the reason for this is, in a competitive market, in the private sector, nobody forces you to spend money where you don't want to. If I want to buy a salted caramelised
nobody forces
latte,
you to go on a government-run train.
Your taxpayer money is forcibly taken from you by the state and forcibly spent on things you don't have a choice.
We're spending it on trains anyway, for privatised trains, but it goes to the private companies. We pay them to run the trains.
Exactly, you don't have a choice.
No, we don't have a choice with the
private sector, you have a choice.
This is fun, isn't it? This is a proper Punch and Judy show. This is old school ideological politics. I love this. This is, I say left versus right. I know, Reem, you have a bit of an issue with me saying that, but this is...
Because I'm a libertarian.
You are a libertarian.
Also, I have a bit of an issue with it because, as I say, if you look at opinion polling on things like public service ownership, wealth taxing, taxing the rich, it's actually well supported, common sense by most of the population.
Yeah,
and these are things that that other countries do that we use. I don't think there's anything special.
I think
Corbyn and Sultana should call their party the Centre Party if they want to show that these things are like mainstream and moderate and would be perfectly good common sense.
They praise people like Lenin that killed millions of people through socialist policies.
On that note, we need to take a break. There you go. There's the bell again. That was the end of round 2. Hopefully you're enjoying this. Sorry if they are talking over each other a little bit, but it's all part of the passion and the enthusiasm here at Talk. This is Talk Breakfast. I'm Russell Quirk. Back after this with these two.
Just shows once again the fundamental issue here, we've got to stop these crossings at source. And, you know, I've said it before on your show how, you know, how frustrated I was as a government MP before we lost the election that we couldn't get these measures through to deliver the Rwanda scheme. I think it was the right idea, and it was frustrating that it was opposed at every step in terms of legal opposition and, of course, from Labour and particularly and therefore in the House of Lords, and it meant we couldn't legislate in the way we had wanted to, and I very much regret that.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Where's that bell? Come on, Dave. We need the bell. It's round. There it is. There it is. Round three. Just a few more minutes left of these two. It's fun, isn't it? Look, to have diametrically opposed ideologies. It's great, and it shows wonderful balance. Ofcom, if you're listening. Luke Hilliard and Reem Ibrahim. Let's talk about universities. Did you both go to uni?
I did, yes.
Did you go, Luke?
Yep, I did.
I didn't go. My biggest regret, actually, everybody, my parents were just, well, never sufficiently competent as parents enough to push me in that direction. And look,
what would you have studied
here
if
I
you
am,
did?
law.
Really?
I wouldn't have become an estate agent at the age of 16. And now here I am. Look. So university, pointless? Yes?
Depends
no?
on the degree. I think.
What about a degree in Taylor Swift?
Yeah, awful. I mean, we have Mickey Mouse degrees basically because of the funding model. There is zero incentive for universities to do well. It's basically, the current situation is basically like going to the hairdressers, asking for a haircut, and then having a government official come in and pay the hairdresser, and then instead having the haircut done, but the hairdresser's already been paid, so there's no incentive for the haircut to really look that good.
Are universities now, Luke, really just a means of that university making money? Are they just about the commercial imperative, do you think, more than anything else?
I think we have to be a bit careful about this debate because a university education, the thing that's usually used to cite to make the case for universities being a waste of money is the amount of money that people are earning after they go to university. And I think education should be about more than that. It's about, you know, developing critical thinking skills and, you know, education for education's sake. There are lots of things that
so it's not just about the money that you earn when you leave.
Exactly, yeah.
Do you think that people are learning critical thinking skills at British universities today?
I mean,
when they're deplatforming anyone on the right?
I don't think I have enough a breadth of experience to make such a sort of sweeping. I don't doubt that there are some where they're not, but I think
didn't the new government repeal the law that was put into place by the previous government that was designed to allow absolute freedom of speech on university campuses?
Protect free speech. They did. It's really, really sad, and I'm really concerned by it. I will say, to Luke's point, British universities are basically considered to be second in the world. You know, the American universities are number one, but we are one of the most amazing things we have in this country are our universities. Still, our academic credentials are fantastic, but that isn't to say
a lot of that's to do with the English language, because so many people across the world learn English as a second language, so it's much easier to come here to study than it is to go to Germany or somewhere when very few people will speak.
Yeah, and also the history. I mean, our universities have existed for a lot longer than other countries have because we're a much older country, and I think that's something to be proud of. However, the funding model does need to change, and what I think is interesting, so the IEA published a paper about a year ago by a guy called Peter Ainsworth looking at the funding model and saying, actually, what you should do is attach funding for a university degree to a graduate salary, so to the expected graduate salary of that student, making those degrees actually financially worthwhile. And it has happened at some American universities. The problem is you need to get rid of the cap, that £9,000 cap, because obviously it means that every single university go to that cap, and you need a real, genuine, competitive market in university degrees. The current situation is pretty unsustainable because of how much money we're spending, and as we've just discussed and alluded to, it does mean you end up with university degrees like Taylor Swift studies, because there is absolutely no incentive for those universities to provide genuinely good quality university degrees.
And back to my point, it's £27,000 or thereabouts, isn't it? Do we also think there's a problem that more people go to university, and indeed more people expect to go to university. The last stat I read,
Blair,
something like 50% of all students now go through, or all people leaving school go to university rather than into a job.
Absolutely, and Tony Blair wanted that to be the case. He was very proud of the fact that there were more people going to university. And I think you're absolutely right. There doesn't need to be that many number of people going to university. University is fantastic for those people that want to study academic subjects, that want to go into professions that require it. But honestly, I think you are so much better off in so many instances learning on the job. If you're doing something that doesn't require a university degree, I think it's just a huge waste of money.
I think that depends on those jobs with good career progression and processes in place to make sure people systematically develop skills when entering the profession as like 18-year-olds or whatever. Then that's great. But if those jobs aren't there, that's more of a problem.
Because of what we spoke about earlier, and the high taxes and the slowing economy.
I'll tell you where also jobs do not exist. It's as a consequence of the following university degrees. I'm just going to read out to you just for fun, because it's 9 o'clock on a Saturday morning, and we like to be a little bit light-hearted here on Talk. So-called Mickey Mouse degrees include the following: golf management, surf science, surf science. Durham University designed an optional module apparently centred around Harry Potter to examine prejudice, citizenship and bullying in modern society. That's part of a bachelor's degree in education
I suspect
studies.
if you look at those things, though, there's probably actually a lot more
You're not going to defend
substance
those,
to
Luke,
them.
are you?
Like surf science, for example, about that's oceanography and the tidal patterns, which is actually quite important stuff to know about.
This is how a surfboard traverses as well.
Regardless.
Very quickly, we've only got a few seconds left. Very, very quickly, let me just read you this. Woke Council advises staff not to call parents mum and dad. Officials in one of Britain's wokest councils have asked staff to call parents caregivers instead, rather than mum and dad. They say the term is more appropriate, as its employees should not make assumptions about a child's biological parents. This is part of a world gone mad. We've got about 10 seconds. Your response?
I'd hope that they have no potholes and zero crime in that area, because clearly they have nothing better to do than
Luke,
twiddle
very
their
quickly.
thumbs.
I mean, sure. Maybe it's a bit daft. I don't mind. Also, if you're not being raised by your mum and dad
but
for
when
whatever
it's
reason,
imposed on others,
if you're not being raised by your mum and dad, it might be slightly annoying when that is assumed. By
You
I don't know, I wouldn't sort of
two
judge
have been
people in that
brilliant.
position.
Let's hope Sophia Slade comes up after this is just as good. And that was Reem and Luke. Thank you very much indeed.
How much, ladies and gentlemen, are fish and chips where you come from? We'll go to Jason in Crewe.
Jason from Crewe, fish, chips and peas, £7.50. It's the best chippy in England.
Janice in Leeds, go.
Regarding fish and chips, in Leeds it's between £9.50 and £12.75.
Whitby, how much is fish and chips?
3 of us, fish, chips, peas, I think one of us carry sauce, 3 cans of pop, just short of 70 quid.
£70? That's 23 quid a head, man. Even my maths does that. Very quickly, a voice note. Campbell in Scotland, go.
Up here in Vance in the northeast of Scotland, we can get a fillet and a half of haddock with our regular chips for £8 and 10 pence, and it's by far and away one of the best chippies I've ever had.
Kenneth in Surrey, fish and chips, go.
Fish and chips in Ascot, about half a mile from where you used to live, will cost you £12 and 60 pence. Great show. Keep up the good work.
That's why I moved, because you were living there. When was the last time you had fish and chips?
Couple of weeks.
How
ago.
much? Where'd you get it from?
I think it was about 40 quid. It was in the Ivy.
Honestly, you really are. For any of you who think he's a man of the people, I nearly said you're a...
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. It's just gone 9 o'clock, 9:02. In fact, I'm here till 10 o'clock. Peter Caldwell after me. I will be back tomorrow. I'm doing the breakfast show tomorrow between 6 and 10. Also, I'll be joined in a minute by Sophia Slay from The Sun newspaper, talking about some of the stuff in her newspaper. But before that, I must get to some of these text messages because there have been lots and lots of them. Keep them coming. 87222 plus the word talk. And indeed, you can call, as many people have done. The switchboard is extremely busy, it's fair to say, this morning. I'm going to be taking some calls. Might even take one in a minute, actually, if that's okay, with the guys behind the glass. 0344 499 1000. Your participation is welcome and indeed encouraged. Let me just read you some of these. This is... Wow, Kevin in Birmingham says, good morning, have a great day. Let's put a smile on the face of the British people. He says, I'm on my way to the Rewind Festival with my wife and I'm going to have a fantastic time listening to the Thompson Twins and ABC. Wow, they are literal blasts from the past. Thompson Twins, what was that? Hold Me Now, that was one of the tracks from them, wasn't it? And ABC, I think that was the first album I ever bought, would you believe? Lexicon of Love. Wow, I am definitely showing my age. That was late 80s, but was there ever a better era for music than the 80s? I would argue even better than the 60s. Dave behind the glass, he's agreeing with me. There you go. Colin says, pray tell, what is the answer to all this madness? When will it end before we lose our great country? Yes, it is halfway down the toilet, I'm afraid, Colin, isn't it? But we're doing everything we can here, almost as as part of the opposition, really, to anything that is non-commonsensical. As you know, Talk is the home of common sense. Dean says, hi Russell, hi Peter, from obviously when we had Peter Blexley in the studio earlier on this morning between 6 and 7:30. I honestly believe that the establishment are getting their own back because we had the nerve to vote leave, says Dean from Dagenham. Well, yes, a bit of spite. That certainly applies to the civil service. Let's take a quick call. Let's speak to Grace. Somewhere in London, Grace, you are. Where are you in London, Grace?
Ealing.
Ealing. I know it well. We used to have a studio here in the days of Piers Morgan and the Jeremy Kyle evening show. That was in Ealing. What did you want to say, Grace?
With regard to these flags, I slightly understand the concern about them in that sometimes the British flag or the English flag have been used by people who have unkind or riotous attitudes. But it's not logical to therefore presume that anyone who puts up a flag is has bad behaviour. So the council is mistaken. And also, ultimately, whilst there are some people who use the flag who have horrible attitudes, you don't fix those attitudes. I'm thinking, for example, of the National Front, and I'm saying very clearly that I entirely believe that it makes no sense to blame everyone who waves the flag for their behaviour, but I'm trying to work out what's going on in the mind of these people in the council. Even if it were the case that the flag were always associated with people like the National Front, you still wouldn't resolve the unpleasant attitudes of those people by stopping them using a flag.
Well, it's appeasement, Grace, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I feel very conscious that flags can mean different things to different people. That's why I'm trying to talk about what I think is going on in the minds of people who really hate the flag, though I know that most people listening to this see it in a completely different way. They mean different things to different people. I mean, one of the things that speaks to me about the St. George's Cross is that ultimately it's a cross because St. George was, in theory, following or trying to follow Christianity, and Jesus died on a cross. And when he died on the cross, it was because of the awful things that we as human beings have all done. And I'm thinking about, so you don't fix those awful things by getting rid of a flag.
No, but we do seem to be the only country that somehow is ashamed of its flag and therefore its national identity, but also then appeases those that believe that the flag is in some way now only a symbol of the extreme right, the National Front, the BNP and far-right thugs and so on. Grace in Ealing in London, thank you very much indeed. Points well made. Sophia Slay from The Sun is desperately putting her earpiece in. I'll carry on talking for a second. Yes, there you go. Let's actually, while she's sorting herself out from a technical perspective, let's hear what Donald Trump had to say about his meeting with his buddy Vladimir Putin yesterday.
I believe we had a very productive meeting. There were many, many points that we agreed on, most of them, I would say, a couple of big ones that we haven't quite gotten there, but we've made some headway. So there's no deal until there's a deal. I will call up NATO in a little while. I will call up the various people that I think are appropriate, and I'll, of course, call up President Zelensky and tell him about today's meeting.
So, Sophia, there's no deal until there's a deal. Who knew?
No deal.
That obvious statement was, obvious statement of all obvious statements, I suppose. Are we surprised? Do we think that they've come away after just 2 or 3 hours of chatting, no doubt, about, when, of course, behind closed doors, we don't know exactly what they were talking about. Are we surprised that there's been no deal struck immediately?
I don't think we're surprised. I don't think you can have a deal come out without Ukraine being present.
Which they will be, apparently, in the next round.
Yeah. It sounds like, so this morning Zelensky has tweeted saying that he's going to meet Trump at the in Washington on Monday. So there's still hopes that they'll get together and Ukraine will be involved. And Europe has been very clear: no deal without Ukraine, no peace without Ukraine being involved. So I don't think we were surprised. I think it would have been quite something stunning and shocking had they've come out with some sort of ready-made peace deal.
Well, it would have been inappropriate, I guess, because Trump certainly doesn't have the authority. I mean, he may feel that he is the grown-up in the room insofar as being able to table a solution. But of course, yes, without Zelensky, and indeed I would argue his people saying, because we know what this is going to end up being. This is going to be some kind of annexation of Donbass, whether it be land, I guess minerals, mineral rights. So Trump doesn't have the right to give that up on Zelensky's behalf.
No, he doesn't, but he's got the power. He can
turn the money off.
Exactly. He's the boss.
Which he threatened to do in the White House a few months ago. In that, I would say, gobsmacking display of almost anti-diplomacy, scolding the leader of a sovereign nation, Ukraine, as in Volodymyr Zelensky, as he did in the White House. I have to say, though, do we think that his heavy-handed, almost bullying tactics actually might shake the tree of this situation enough for us actually, as a consequence of that, for there to be some success, some give, a solution at the end of it? Do we think that his way of deal-making, which is to be very bombastic, frankly, do we think actually that might yield benefits?
Look, I think that is the big question, and I think sort of this morning there's been a lot of commentators very quick out the blocks to sort of say, oh, this is a great coup for Putin, he's going back to Russia saying, look, I had the red carpet rolled out for me, everything's great, I'm the big man. But I think that's too soon. I think it's too soon to say this is a coup for Putin. I think we need to wait and see what happens. We could be talking in a few weeks' time, and people are already talking about Trump may end up with the Nobel Peace Prize.
Well, which he's definitely angling at. But a lot of commentators, particularly on the left, will now be saying, and they are saying today, well, Trump has failed. I don't buy that at all, do you? It's part of the process.
Yeah, it's way, way, way too soon. And it's a negotiation. This it's been going on really since before 2022. But
2014.
Exactly. But 2022 was when it became, really, really hot. We became really involved helping Ukraine. Lots of money, lots of equipment.
What are we now? £18 billion in, I think.
It's a lot.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Let's move on to page 2 of your paper.
Yes.
The top of page 2. Let's just read the headline. Fury at Keir, no to Farage Lords. Explain.
This is a fun story. So Nigel Farage, leader of Reform UK, the new kids on the block, he wrote to the Prime Minister sort of saying, come on, we should have some peers, even though I don't think he's pro the House of Lords anyway.
Well, didn't he say it should be an elected chamber?
Yeah.
But I guess what he's saying is that whilst we have to have it as an appointed chamber, I would like some Lords, please. Exactly that.
And, he does make an interesting point.
Is he just feathering his own nest for the future here, do you think? Lord Farage of wherever?
I don't know. I don't think it's about that. I imagine Farage has probably been offered peerages in the past. I wouldn't be surprised if he had.
Shut up and go away by the Conservatives. Yeah.
Yes, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, he's strongly hinted that before, and others have as well. But I think this is. We're going to see a lot more of this, I think, from Reform as well, because they want to be seen as a government in waiting. And I know sort of people might find that funny because they've only got, what, 5 MPs?
No, I think most people listening to this are already assuming that Nigel Farage will be Prime Minister.
Exactly, exactly. So they want to say, look, we are the real opposition, forget about the Tories, we're the people you should be dealing with. Of course we should have, you know, peers in the House of Lords and things like that. They're going to be trying to position themselves. You know, I wouldn't be surprised before long if we start sort of seeing, you know, promises to, if I win the election, you'll be made Home Secretary, you'll be made Chancellor, that kind of thing. And I expect a steady drumbeat of this over the next few years, really, as they sort of position themselves. Labour's problem, the interesting thing about Labour is they are really attacking reform, really going in for Nigel in particular, sort of personal attacks.
The Conservatives have ceased to be their target. Because
Not
they know
interested,
that, because politically, for now at least, the Conservatives are a busted flush. Even though we've just talked about, with regard to the latest polling, I find out now the Conservatives actually have gained 3 points in the polls. Reform has stayed pretty much static. But yes, they know that Nigel Farage is a formidable operator. I'm afraid Kemi Badenoch simply isn't.
But also, he can be a divisive character. So I think that's why they're trying to really focus on him rather than anyone else. I think as well that's people could be turned off by Nigel and they want to sort of tap into that, even though it's kind of a Marmite figure, right? Some people really, really love him. They're not going to win them over, but they're going to go for the others. And I think they're in this sort of tricky situation where they don't want to legitimise them, if you know what I mean, because I think by giving them peers it sort of says, well, yeah, you are a big power, a big mainstream party.
Sophia, does he have a point? I mean, you know, you're writing here, it's Jack Elsom, I think, who's your colleague, writing that because of the rise of reform in the polls, they may only have, wherever they are, 4 members of Parliament, but their popularity is unquestionable. And as a consequence of that, I guess because he's thinking about what now happens in the future in terms of legislation and what Nigel Farage calls a seismic shift in British politics, it merits some reform seats in the House of Lords. I mean, he does have a point, doesn't he, that there's now a disproportionality in terms of, I mean, how many people sit in the House of Lords? About 850 of them. I think the majority is still Labour, isn't it? Obviously, Tony Blair and Gordon Brown managed to stuff the Lords full of Labour peers. The concern, I guess, Nigel Farage has, understandably politically, is if he takes government, he becomes Prime Minister, would he get any legislation through? Because, of course, if he's got no support politically in the House of Lords, the second chamber, before he has a chance to do anything about reform with a small r in terms of making it maybe an elected chamber, he's going to have a real problem. So he needs some voices in there, doesn't he?
It would certainly help, yes. I think it would be very unusual for the Lords to really try and block government legislation. I mean, we had these problems in the Brexit years. I try not to think about it too much now, but
Brexit. Oh, did you have to mention
I know,
that word?
it was a while ago now. We did, you know, we have had those problems in the past, but you know, I wouldn't be surprised, you know, say sort of hypothetically if reform did win, you know, Conservatives in the House of Lords sort of falling into line and tacit support.
I suspect, Sophia, that those that are Conservatives now may well become Reform in the coming weeks and months. I forecast a whole wave of defections as the Conservative Party, in my view, realise that they remain unpopular and Reform continues on its express chain journey, frankly, to potential governmental and electoral dominance. Ricky Jones, we've talked about him a lot. Let's just watch this.
We've got children and women using those trains, destroying the summer holidays. They are disgusting, nasty factors, and we need to cut all their throats and get rid of them all.
So, as we all know by now, a not guilty verdict on Ricky Jones. He was not inciting violence or any kind of hatred. What he did there, apparently, according to a jury of 12 people yesterday at Snaresbrook Crown Court, after a small amount of deliberation, frankly. I think they're only deliberating for about an hour or so. A trial that only lasted 4 or 5 days. I guess, look, vindicated completely, despite the fact that what you saw there was Ricky Jones as an elected Labour councillor, as he was. I mean, he's not now because he's had the whip suspended. It'd be interesting to see if Labour give it back to him now he's been vindicated. Certainly, maybe not in the court of public opinion, but in the legal courts as such. It'd be interesting to see if they restore the whip. But he was very animated, very aggressive there. This defence that he put forward, Sophia, insofar as it being him caught on the hop, where calling for his political opponents' throats to be cut. I mean, that doesn't sit correctly with me at all. I don't think I buy that. But is there an argument here that he has been vindicated, and he should have been, because despite the fact that what he said was distasteful, it's just a matter of his right to free speech?
Yeah, the reason I sort of picked this story out is because it taps into actually a big ongoing political row, which you just sort of touched on there. Exactly that, the kind of...
What's allowable?
The hurty word debate. And where is the line? Where do you cross the line? And, you know, I think we've all been at home with our families and had a row and gone, oh, I could kill you. Obviously, you don't mean it. But when that's in the public arena, when you are, say, a councillor, does that have a different weight? Are you inciting violence?
Well, and should he be held to a higher standard?
Exactly that.
I think so.
I really struggle to sort of find where the line is, and it's this big debate sort of. It taps into something much wider about two-tier justice, which is something that's talked about quite a lot at the moment. And I think I wouldn't say this is necessarily the perfect example of two-tier justice.
It is different to Lucy Connolly.
It is different. It's being compared to her story because, you know, if you look at physically what they did, you know, they both said quite horrible things, one in a sort of physically public forum, one on a public forum online.
But there's not much difference in terms of what they said.
Exactly.
The big difference is that he pled not guilty, was found not guilty. She was encouraged, shall we say, by whoever to plead guilty and got a ferocious sentence, I would say. So what is does the Sun take a position on this, Sophia, as such, or are you just reporting what you believe are the facts? Obviously, your headline on page 21, two-tier justice fury, but you've put speech marks around that because you're echoing really what a lot of people were saying on social media yesterday, that this is representative two-tier justice. I think, frankly, there's a question mark over that from a legal perspective. And Labour firebrands joy. Well, I guess he's pretty joyous. Chris Phillips, though, is under fire, I noticed today, the Shadow Home Secretary, for tweeting about two-tier justice. Lots of his former Conservative colleagues, including Dominic Grieve, have slated him for what they call his total misunderstanding of how the British legal system works.
Yeah, it has actually sparked a bit of a blue-on-blue row today. I did see Jacob Rees-Mogg, I think Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg, isn't he, coming out overnight sort of saying this is quite clearly not two-tier justice because the cases are different. One pled guilty, one didn't. So it has sparked this kind of... The Conservatives, they quite often have this sort of internal battle. The ones that are sort of conservative, really like, you know, the rule of law, our institutions and things like that. And then there's the other kind of younger, newer Conservatives that sort of like to tear down the institutions a little bit. So there's a little bit of that friction there, I think, as well. And it's definitely sparked a debate. I mean, sort of James Cleverly was totally in line with Chris Philp this morning. They're very angry about it. I think
they're playing politics, aren't they?
It's perception.
It's populism. And frankly, so I've had enough of politicians that put populism before what's right for the country, ideology, and so on. I think, you know, Chris Philp and maybe James Cleverly absolutely demonstrate that they, like a lot of politicians, would just do and say whatever they think is the right thing from a public perception, rather than actually being a little bit more honest. I think we'd have a lot more time for our politicians in terms of integrity and conviction if they weren't looking for the nearest bandwagon to jump on. Sophia, we've got to leave it there, I'm afraid. Sophia Slay, you've got a brilliant surname coming up. Well, I say coming up to Christmas. we kind of are. It's August. It'll be Christmas before you know it. Thank you very much indeed. Hopefully you'll come back soon and, yes, talk us through the wonderful content of the Sun newspaper again in the not-too-distant future. Sophia Slay, thank you very much indeed. I'm Russell Quirk. I'm in for Alex Phillips, in case you hadn't already noticed. Yes, I'm not her. I'm here till 10 o'clock, but back after this break.
just shows once again the fundamental issue. We've got to stop these crossings at source. And, you know, I've said it before on your show how, you know, how frustrated I was as a government MP before we lost the election that we couldn't get these measures through to deliver the Rwanda scheme. I think it was the right idea, and it was frustrating that it was opposed at every step in terms of legal opposition and, of course, from Labour and particularly and therefore in the House of Lords, and it meant we couldn't legislate in the way we had wanted to, and I very much regret that.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
So welcome back, 9:24. I'm Russell Quirk, here till 10. Peter Cardwell after me, so he'll have more of this exciting and interesting stuff, lots of conversation, information, debate and so on. And in that vein, do you know the bit of this job that I really like? I love the monologues, I love the guests and the cut and thrust, the debate and so on, but I really love you lot calling in particular, because you might not believe this, but I never know, we as presenters never know what someone is going to say. Nothing's rehearsed, nothing's scripted. So when I talk to Kerry in Redcar, as I'm about to, I've really got no idea what she's going to say. She could call me out on something, she'd be very critical, she could catch me out, who knows. So Kerry, over to you.
Good morning, Russell.
Good morning.
I was watching you and Peter this morning, bright and early on my day off.
Thank you. And how was that for you?
Watch your show every day. Well,
every time they let me on. It's not very often, really. But I am back on tomorrow, though.
I shall be watching.
Thank you. So you want to talk about what?
This immigration.
Right.
And what we're giving them.
What, the so-called asylum seekers? I mean, they're not really asylum seekers.
They're not asylum seekers, are they?
No, they're economic migrants with their hands out.
Oh, yes. And what it was is just all this free stuff they're getting.
Yeah.
And
did you see the list? And actually, if you've got time, Kerry, if we've got time, I'm hoping the boss behind the glass is nodding. Can I just quickly read through? We did this earlier on.
Because it just annoys me.
Go on, I'm sorry, but for those that weren't awake as early as you and I and Peter Blexley earlier on, let me just rattle through. This is the list of things, and this is not exhaustive because Peter Blexley and I came up with another 2 or 3 over and above this. This is a list of what you get if you are an asylum seeker or so-called asylum seeker to this country. Housing and food provided, hotel accommodation including 3- and 4-star hotels with facilities such as free Wi-Fi, a bar and a restaurant. You get £49.18 a week. Access to food banks, free cooking lessons, HC2 certificates giving free dental care, free prescriptions and free eye tests, glasses, contact lenses and even a wig if you are follically challenged, I guess. University bursaries, scholarships and fee waivers for asylum seekers, discounted Spanish or French lessons. Someone's just texted to say, actually, I don't know about French and Spanish lessons. Maybe some of them should have English lessons.
English lessons.
I don't disagree with that. Free bus travel from some councils, free driving lessons from several councils. Don't forget the trampoline lessons that a certain council also, was it Kent or Nottinghamshire? Free PlayStation consoles, free yoga sessions, free swimming, group exercise classes and gym sessions, discounts on theatre shows, clothing, including T-shirts, trousers, sweatshirts, trainers, blah, blah, blah. And, of course, don't forget the obligatory free mobile phone with which they can then make TikTok videos to tell you how to kill members of your family. Kerry, that's the list.
Shocking.
It is, isn't it?
Absolutely shocking.
What is wrong with our government that they not only allow them in, but they are providing literally a red carpet, a silver tray? I mean, you may as well have a butler on a red carpet with a silver tray at Dover dishing this stuff out when these people come off the boat. It is obscene.
What incentive is it? I've got a 17-year-old son who goes to college full-time, works part-time, is on a waiting list for 6 months for driving lessons, pays for his mobile phone, pays for his gym, pays for his PlayStation. What incentive is it for them when they see all these people getting it for free?
I mean, to say it's not fair given that you and your family have presumably paid into the system. To say it's not fair would be an understatement.
We both work full time.
Yeah, and you don't get free dentistry, nor do I.
My partner's been waiting for a year.
There are tales now of GP surgeries being told that they must register all of the asylum seekers in migrant hotels in their area, and they must go and see them and allow up to half an hour per patient to make sure that they get the health care and attention that asylum seeker wants. Can you imagine that, having a doctor rock up at your house, Kerry, to make sure that you're okay and to devote half an hour of their time at public expense to you? I mean, it's astonishing, and yes, no wonder of course they're coming here, because as we know from these asylum seekers that are making videos for Instagram and TikTok on these boats on the way over, they all say, we're coming for the freebies, we're coming for the handouts. So it's no wonder that they come here. Why don't we just cut the incentives off, rather than smashing gangs and prosecuting people for putting up TikTok adverts and trying to prosecute the 81st and 82nd person in a boat, as Yvette Cooper stupidly wants to do? Why don't we just turn the tap off?
Precisely.
It's easy, isn't it?
You come here, you go in a derelict building with nothing.
Yeah, okay. Right, Kerry, thank you very much indeed for your call. Thank you. I'm totally with you. Let's go to another caller now. Chris in Epsom. That's very posh, Chris.
Russell, we've spoken times before, but not for a while.
Okay. What do you want to say?
Quickly about immigrants, and then I want to say something about Putin.
Sure.
The immigrant that arrived here on Saturday was in a 4-star hotel by Sunday. All right. I've been caring for my mother and father. My father passed 2 years ago, and my mother's bedbound with Parkinson's, dementia, and a host of other things, including stage 3 kidney disease. My universal credit was stopped in January. They had 28 days to do a review. I've chased them and chased them and chased them. I still haven't had the review. We're in August. So that... We know the world's not fair, but that's absolutely ludicrous.
It's completely disproportionate and unfair on the population of Britain. I mean, I was going to suggest to Kerry just now, I'll suggest to you, Chris, that, I mean, seriously, you could trick the system, couldn't you, by, getting a ferry or Eurostar over to France, getting in a dinghy, coming over with a black hoodie on, and actually you would get the NHS care, the dentistry care, the benefits, the hotel accommodation, the driving lessons, to Kerry's point just now, all of the things that we as Brits could argue that we deserve because we've paid into the system, but don't get because the system is so clogged up and bankrupt, basically. I mean, you could trick the system by literally going over and coming back on a boat to Dover yourself.
Russell, I don't need to do that. There's an English guy's already done it. It's on YouTube. Look it up. He stayed in a hotel for 3 weeks to find out exactly what they were getting.
Well, did he pretend to be an asylum seeker?
Yeah, he went over and got on the dinghy and came back.
And what happened?
He got a hotel and he got all the freebies. Look it up on YouTube. The other thing that's interesting, look up on YouTube. I'm not going to mention the name of the company. It's a company we know that are making a lot of money out of immigrants.
Well, hang on. Do you mean Serco?
I didn't say that.
Well, Serco do make a lot of money out of immigrants. The contract is worth about £4 billion, Chris.
Yes, and they were filmed, and that's again is on YouTube. They were filmed with a leased lorry, loading all the dinghies back up onto a Serco leased lorry, and getting on a ferry back to France. Seriously, I'm serious.
Honestly, and we wonder why people are peacefully, and hopefully it should be and is, peacefully protesting outside migrant hotels. And it's not just because the perception is, the reality in some cases, that migrants come here from other countries, other cultures, and they do very quickly commit crimes that they are then charged with. And okay, some of those are still going through the judicial process and haven't yet been found guilty. But we should be protesting also just because of the fact that these migrants are here, costing upwards of what is it now, 8, 9, 10 million pounds a day just in accommodation.
Hang on a sec, you've got 50,000 here already illegally, right? That's 50,000 homes that are going to have to be found, all right? And then they're going to bring their families over. But the bigger issue, and one that really worries me, all right, and the immigration is terrible, the mass immigration. Normal immigration is fine. My neighbours are Iraqi, Bangladeshi.
I'm married to one, Chris. I'm married to an immigrant, but someone that's been in this country for 25 years and pays in. Chris, I've got to let you go because we've got to go to another break. Sorry, mate. Look, we've spoken before, as you rightly point out. We will speak again, I'm sure. But look, points well made. What a frustration this country is. Look, this is the home of common sense. Why can't we have some common sense in government, for goodness sake? Honestly, these people in their Westminster bubble and also local authority bubbles are so out of touch with us, aren't they? 0344 499 1000 with your view and opinion. I'll be back after this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
So welcome back, 9:35. I'm here just for another 25 minutes. Sorry about that, but I am back tomorrow from 6 till 10, another early morning for me, up at 3:15 this morning to bring you this. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. Talking of bringing you things, we're going to do some sport now. We now have our 90 minutes in 90 seconds segment with Sun sports reporter Isabel Barker.
90 minutes in 90 seconds from the Sun.
So, Isabel, welcome. Apparently there's a football thing going on. Last night was quite important as the literally the kick-off to the Premiership, apparently, whatever that is. I'm not a football person, as you can now probably tell.
Thanks so much for having me on, Russell. Yeah, the Premier League got underway in spectacular fashion. It was a 6-goal thriller. Liverpool won against Bournemouth, but it was a very emotional night in general. Lots of tributes to Diogo Jota, who died in a car crash last month. Liverpool players, TK, the new signing, and Gapco dedicated their goals to Jota, and Salah did as well with the kind of baby shark celebration. You'll have to look it up.
Was there a silence held for Diogo Jota and his brother?
Yeah, there was a silence held at the start, and also the chants were kind of continuing at the end, and Salah was actually in tears. So it was really emotional, and obviously You Can Never Walk Alone was belted out by the fans. So yeah, it was a very, very special moment there as well. But Semenyo for Bournemouth was looking on fire as well. But Liverpool looking like the ones to beat again, the reigning champions.
Can we talk about the Semenyo thing for a second? Because he apparently, so I'm told by Tom Clayton at TalkSport, scored a belter of a goal, but only as almost a consequence, really, of a racism incident.
Yeah, there was a racism incident involving a fan in Anfield. He was ejected, but it's just so tiring to see, and that's what he said as well. Like, why is this still happening? You know, he scored an absolute worldie of a goal, 2 goals. The second one was pretty much done virtually himself from Liverpool's box. He just ran out and charged to the other end and scored an absolute corker of a goal. But
so 4-2 to Liverpool beating Bournemouth, and the Premier League apparently kicks off formally 3 o'clock today. So what are some of the fixtures quickly that we can expect to see, but I won't be seeing later on?
I'm at the Glamour tie, I'm at Fulham Brighton, two managers who look like they could be on the front cover of GQ magazine, and two sets of fans who will be looking to dust off their passports for a European tour this season. Obviously, Thomas Frank for Tottenham is starting off his league debut today against Burnley, so it will be interesting to see how Spurs get on. Man City at Molineux will be interesting to see what they look like as well. They finished last season off very strongly, despite that FA Cup final defeat, but they've made a lot of new signings, so they're really looking like they're wanting to challenge Liverpool for that title again. Sunderland, the Premier League newbies, their Stadium of Light is completely sold out for their tie against West Ham. I can't wait to see them in action. Completely new side, obviously been away from the top flight for 8 years, so it's going to be absolutely rocking their stadium.
Well, some people will be very excited about 3 o'clock this afternoon. I couldn't care less, frankly. It's... well, you know what they say about golf is a good walk spoiled. I don't know what football would be in potentially the equivalent. But anyway, thank you very much indeed, Isabel. Sorry I'm not the sports junkie that clearly you are, but I've spoiled it for you, Isabel Barker, sports reporter at The Sun. Talking of The Sun, my friend Amanda Devlin joins us now, so we're going to go straight to her and talk about some entertainment and showbiz news, which is much more up my street, actually. Amanda, how are you?
Hey, I'm good, thank you, fellow planker.
Yes,
How
we
are
are
you?
both plankers. Should we explain what you mean by that quickly? We mean plank of the week rather than something weird.
Although we do get called the plank sometimes, don't we, on X?
Well, some people say that you and I should win it sometimes.
Always, I think, actually.
Talking of winning things, Strictly Come Dancing. It's the lineup has been announced. My goodness, aren't we excited?
Yes, I mean, it's 15 new people, and I think it's the same every single year, where you hear all of these names, you say this is the worst lineup ever. To be honest, it's always my first thought, but then we have to look back at the previous series and we have to think, actually there were people who we hadn't heard of, who we end up, after watching their journey, we end up loving them.
But that, Amanda, it does happen often. Maybe it's just because I'm of a certain age where you get to a point, it seems, where the I'm a Celebrity crowd, the latest cohort, or indeed Strictly are announced, and I look and think, I don't know who 3/4 of them are. Is that the same this year? I mean, can you rattle through some of the famous, inverted commas, celebrities that have been selected for Strictly this year? Who are they? I know Tom Skinner's been selected. He's a fellow Essex boy. Good luck to Tom. I suspect he will be brilliant, actually.
I do. I mean, he's such a character, but he's the one who's caused the controversy. He's got a bit of a checkered past. He admits being arrested for stolen goods years ago, but he was on the Apprentice.
Amanda, let me tell you, in Essex, that's standard.
You can say that because you're from there.
Yes.
I think. Yeah, okay, let's keep it at that. I really love Tom, and I think he's going to be a great addition to it because he's just got that down-to-earthness. And sometimes when there's this backlash over someone like him, it feels a bit classist to me. He's been through it. He's literally written a book about what he's been through and how he's turned his life around. That's the kind of people that you do want to hear from, who have really experienced life. He then went on
Real
to
world. He's a market trader, becomes celebrity. I mean, yeah, look, good luck to you. Who else is in the lineup? Anyone that who will we love and who will we hate?
You've kind of got the standards, like you've got the soap stars, you've got, reality stars. Danny Dyer, as in the Love Island one, not her dad.
Big or little? Little.
Yeah, the little one. She's on, I think she'll be really lovable. And she'll have a huge popularity vote. So I predict that she will go most of the way, if not go on to win it. You've got loads of different ones this year. I mean, I think that's what's really great about Strictly, actually, is because they always do lead the way. You've got she's a model who has Down syndrome, and she's the first contestant to have that, who goes on to the main show. I think that'll open up a lot of doors to speaking about it, making it a little bit more...
And Amanda, when do we start hearing the scandals? Because, of course, Strictly is famous for scandals and, indeed, affairs. You won't want to do this, but any forecasting who's going to end up on the front pages of your paper in the next few months having had an affair with their dance partner?
Hopefully all of them, because that'd be great for us.
Great for you.
Right.
Yeah, all tips to Amanda Devlin at The Sun, by the way.
Yes, please do send me in if you've had an affair or planning to have one. No, they were all, I mean, obviously dancing, it's what happens, you're so close, and that's what happens every year, that there's something, there's always a little bit of chemistry. I'm hoping no families are ruined during the process of this filming, though. It would be a shame. But you've got a real hunk in there, the rugby player, Chris Robshaw, who I'm particularly looking forward to.
Is he your personal favourite, Amanda?
He is, I would say, yeah. Also, I mean, I think sportsmen always do really well because they are so competitive. So I think he'll put absolutely everything into it. Got footballers too. I mean, there's such a long list, there's 15 of them. But when you mention the scandals, obviously last year it was a shame because it was the big 20th anniversary of Strictly, but then we had sort of, it was a bit marred by everything. You know, had Giovanni Panici, him being kicked off of the show over allegations with Amanda Abington when they were partnered out.
Amanda, there's been so many scandals, and some are alleged, some are proven. I mean, just to name a couple, I mean, there's, apart from, you know, the affairs, there's been bullying allegations.
Yeah.
There was also, I think, on the front page of your paper a few weeks ago, the shock horror that some celebrities use cocaine at Strictly. I can't believe that. Can you?
Absolutely not. I've never heard of that before. And I honestly do think that with the scandals, though, you know, it does ruin that family show image, and which is a shame because that's what we want. We want to just be able to sit and watch a lovely. We've got all of this bloody, you know, Trump going on and all of this like tense, scary stuff in the world. Sometimes you just want to switch off and actually not. And do
you think Strictly is generally good for that? I mean, a distraction TV. I mean, I wouldn't say I've never watched it. If it's on in the background, if my wife, my kids are watching it, which variously they do, I get it. I get the fact that it is just light entertainment. And hopefully we're not too woke yet. I know it has been criticised for being woke, hasn't it, insofar as having same-sex partners, a shock horror. I don't know why quite that's a problem, but anyway. But yeah, it is good distraction telly, isn't it? Even though it comes out the BBC, which is surprising that their output, in some respects, or maybe the only respect, is seemingly, in this regard, quite good in terms of telly. Amanda, we've got to leave it there because I've got somebody else that wants to talk about some showbiz stuff from Virgin coming up in a minute. So, Amanda,
on me, Russell.
I know, I'm sorry, I'm being dreadfully unfaithful. I will see you on the Plank panel soon. In fact, I think I'm doing it the week after next. I'm away next week, but I think I'm doing
I'll make sure I'm on then. I've got to be on with you.
No. We'll ask Chuck Thomas, obviously, the exec producer.
It's in my contract.
Yes, no, indeed. I will see you there and we'll plank away. Amanda Devlin from The Sun, thank you very much indeed. I'll be back after this.
It just shows once again the fundamental issue is we've got to stop these crossings at source. And, you know, I've said it before on your show how, you know, how frustrated I was as a government MP before we lost the election that we couldn't get these measures through to deliver the Rwanda scheme. I think it was the right idea. And it was frustrating that it was opposed at every step in terms of legal opposition and, of course, from Labour and particularly and therefore in the House of Lords. And it meant we couldn't legislate in the way we had wanted to, and I very much regret that.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back, 9:47. I'm delighted to say, in the last few minutes of this show, I'm delighted to say I'm joined by Steve Denyer from Virgin, Virgin radio presenter. And I was expecting a jingle for this next bit, but I'm told by the powers that be behind the glass that there is no such thing. Budget cuts, I suspect. So you'll just have to, as we get to this, which is the retro rewind, you will just have to imagine the jingle that we may well... really? Is that the best you can do, Dave? That's it. OK. So you'll just have to reimagine a better jingle than that. Steve, I'm so sorry. So sorry.
You know, I turn up with a can-do attitude.
I know. But if I was now on your show,
yes,
guaranteed there'd be a jingle.
Russell Quirk.
Yeah, there you go. Retro Rewind, what's the year?
We're going to focus on year 2000. So everybody listening, watching at the moment, think about how old you were in year 2000. Go on.
32.
Really? OK. 24.
And yeah, that is just sickening. OK, so the year 2000. So
really interesting year. You know, when we think about politics and the royal family, it was calm. It was strangely calm. It was almost like the calm before the storm. With the royal family, Prince William was 18.
So we had no Meghan. We had no Prince Andrew, no sweating revelations.
Indeed.
And so on. It was a nice royal family back.
And we got into year 2000. So remember, Princess Diana had passed away 3 years before. So year 2000, seemingly the royal family hatched a plan to introduce Camilla into proceedings. And
what, like she was new?
She started to become more present.
Even though she'd been around for a while.
Exactly. But in October that year, the Queen attended a 60th birthday party for the King of Greece, and she was seen mixing socially. She was seen chatting to Camilla, and that was the first sign that she's kind of in the fold. Obviously, the marriage was to follow a few years later, but it's interesting to look back at where we were kind of socially.
And I think we lapped that up, didn't we, by the sounds of it? So, you know, all's well there, I guess. What else happened in 2000? 25 years ago.
25 years ago. I think most people will remember this character, Dr. Harold Shipman. Now, this was the huge, very unsettling, very awful breaking news. He was the GP known as Dr. Death. Do you remember?
He was worse for the NHS than even Jeremy Hunt.
Indeed. So when he went to court, 15 of his patients, mainly elderly women, he was found to have killed. He did it pretty much during home visits, administering too much morphine. When they later, so he was put away for life. When they later held an inquiry, they think that up to 250 people had been killed by him. He didn't match any kind of serial killer. There was nothing kind of sexual in the motive. He didn't have any trophies. He slipped up on one of them by trying to put himself into the will of one of the patients, and that is when people started to think...
So there was a money motivation to one. But is he Britain's most serious and prolific serial killer?
If this was true, that upwards of 250 people were killed indeed.
Wow.
He killed himself years later in prison, but it's really, really shocking. The
irony of him killing himself.
He could have been doing that for about 35 years and no one knew until right at the end. So absolutely, he sent shockwaves. I remember, you know, back then, the fact is he was an elderly man, he was a GP, and most people trusted him. And most of the other patients, you know, people who were being looked after him, said that he was thoroughly decent and they've been seeing him for years. So,
and on a more cheery note, Steve, a couple of TV shows that are now, I would say, institutions.
This is interesting. Do you remember the launch of Big Brother, the very, very first one?
You can hear the music now. This is the original music. Is it still used? Because obviously it changed from Channel 4 to Channel 5.
Still used. They keep kind of remixing it. So it went to Channel 5. It's now on ITV. The very, very first one. And we'd never seen anything like this. So 10 contestants. The prize money was £70,000.
And it wasn't celebrity at first. It was ordinary members of the public.
Really, and this is the joy of the first.
That then became celebrities.
They became celebrities, yeah. So, but it was the very first time that we saw normal people going onto television.
Who was in the first?
So, I'm going to chuck at you a few people. Craig, he was the builder.
Remember him?
He won it. We had Nasty Nick. Do you remember?
Remember him? What about Jade Goody? Was she first?
No, she was in the third one.
Was she?
She was in the third one, yeah. The third one that really launched lots of people like Kate Lawler, Virgin Radio's Kate Lawler.
Yeah.
You know, there were lots of celebrities. Alison Hammond was in the third one. But that very first one, they reckon actually by the end of it, it was getting 8 million viewers.
Yeah, and then they did Celebrity,
2000.
which of course the late, very, very great James Whale was a part of.
Yes, of course, that very, very first Celebrity Big Brother was a BBC. It was kind of like a comic relief mashup. Vanessa Feltz famously had that big meltdown. Do you remember the
No,
black
I'm not having that. Vanessa Feltz having a meltdown. No.
Breaking news.
That's never happened.
No.
It's certainly never happened where I'm concerned in this studio, ever before. It's a different story for another time over a drink that's not being broadcast live on air. Vanessa, hope you're well in that wonderful show that you're doing somewhere in the bowels.
The sass in this studio.
Broadcast wing world. And what about this other show that is also an institution?
Well, this is interesting because it's The Weakest Link, and Anne Robinson, before The Weakest Link, used to host Points of View. You know, she was kind of a very normal presenter. She launched this show being almost like the mean headmistress with the ultimate put-downs. Apparently lots of them were scripted, but she enjoyed doing it so much. And by season 2, she was coming with her own put-downs to the contestants.
She was very personal, wasn't she?
Very, very personal.
I mean, she would literally take the mickey out of people's appearance and all sorts as contestants.
Which was bizarre because her own appearance changed dramatically. If you look at pictures of her doing, you know, Points of View, she was 60 when The Weakest Link started.
I think there's a lot of Harley Street surgeons that bought Porsche 911s as a consequence of her.
I couldn't possibly comment, but I am nodding. But it was massive. It was massive.
And the catchphrase, of course.
Yeah, you know, you are the weakest link, goodbye. And they had to, you know, just kind of walk with their head down off the
Was a lot
studio.
of that panto, do you think? Was it all scripted and contrived?
They were told, whatever you do, the contestants were told she's going to be mean. Don't be too upset. But the whole thing, you could hear the gasps of the audience.
It was part of the theatre.
It was part of the theatre.
She doesn't mean it, or did she?
Well, I think she probably did towards the end. I think she kind of, she really, you know, she's very kind of, Kay Burley, you could say, took that act and ran with it later on in Sky News, and you kind of, you know, you were quite fearful of characters like that. But it was Anne Robinson that started it.
Another legend that we need to talk about, who might have headlined a certain event in that year.
Yeah, so Glastonbury in this year, Bowie headlined it. It's amazing. So you had the Glastonbury in year 2000 was incredible because they stated that 100,000 people got in, paid to get tickets, but 250,000 people were there. So more people escaped over the fence into Glastonbury that year than people who paid. You had Bowie, the legendary
health and safety, ladies and
exactly. Well, so afterwards, you know, there was a big thing of like the fence was huge, you can't get in. You had a new band that nobody had heard of called Coldplay.
So can't we get the Glastonbury organisers to become our border force and border control? Wouldn't that be a great idea if those that are policing Glastonbury, not letting people in or out, were actually deployed to stop the migrant crisis in Britain? I'm just saying, Steve, that might be a good idea. Kirsty McCall?
This is the tragic story of the year, tragic showbiz story of the year. We lost her at the end of this year. She was on a holiday with her 2 teenage sons in Mexico. They were diving when a speedboat started coming towards them, and she kind of jumped in front to save her sons. She was killed. I remember this, and I just remember feeling so gutted. It was such a loss, such an amazing, amazing singer. There's a bench was erected in her memory in Soho Square. One of the songs she released was Soho Square, and I often walk past the bench. Yeah, and it's a lovely kind of tribute. But she was cut in her prime. She was literally kind of in her 40s when this happened. So really, really sad, shocking story from this year.
Yeah, and Wembley, not as we know it.
No, so it was known as the Empire Stadium when it was built way back in the 1920s. The famous Twin Towers of Wembley Stadium were demolished in this year. The very last gigs, Oasis, Bon Jovi...
So this is not when the new Wembley opened, this is just the demolition.
This is the demolition.
New stadium took some time...
Yeah, so the Wembley Stadium laid kind of completely desolate for 2 years. It took 7 years for them to build the arch March, and then it was reopened the later part of the decade. Of course, now it fits 90,000 people, huge. We had the Millennium Dome as well opening.
Well, I was going to say, we need to rattle through these now, because we've only got a couple of minutes left, but 2000 was a busy year. It says, Millennium Dome open, which is quite surprising given it was a Labour government, and you would imagine that actually, given that it might have opened 2 or 3 years late, but it didn't. It opened in time.
It was a disaster, complete disaster. It
was a white elephant.
It had zones in it. Do you remember the body zone? And people turned up and they said, well, for the money we spent to come in, it was very, very poor.
It was pathetic. But look at it now, one of the greatest venues in Britain.
7 years later,
so whoever
it
had that
opened
idea
the O2 Arena.
Some music, some tracks.
Yeah, despite all the cool tracks I can be telling you about, all the emerging artists, you had Bob the Builder.
Are we really going to do this?
Can We Fix It?
Did this become #1?
This was the biggest selling song, Russell, of year 2000.
Can I just say to you, audience Britain, what is wrong with you? So that track was bought more than any other in 2000?
More than any other. Neil Morrissey, who was the voice of Bob the Builder, voiced this track. It was a huge, you see, Toys R Us were still around. The merchandise, they made so much money from the whole franchise, and this song becoming #1 was really...
Should we turn to some other slightly more sensible and worthy tracks, though?
Well, not really. I mean, Who Let the Dogs Out was the other track.
I didn't mean that. That was 2000, 25 years ago. Wow. And that, of course, is used as the background to many, many things.
It is, and the Baha Men had been around for 37 years before this track. They released this track. It was kind of a Jamaican track, which was about men acting in a really dodgy, way.
Steve, can I just suggest that Bob the Builder and Who Let the Dogs Out are not exactly tributes to the best songwriting prowess that this country might perhaps have
and
to
Virgin
offer.
Radio, being a rock and roll station, we don't endorse
there was a
rubbish.
track by the great Robbie Williams, which is this one, which hopefully we're going to play if we've got time. No,
Rock
not that
DJ.
One.
Rock
This one,
DJ.
remember this?
Amazing.
I don't want to ride. So Peter Caldwell has just walked into the studio with his shorts on, I think, again, and he's actually moving his shoulders in such a fashion as to pretend to dance to Robbie Williams.
Well, you've made my day. Thank you for coming in.
Yeah. Well, Steve, I've got to say goodbye to you, but stay there if you don't mind. We almost finished this. Oh, The Beach, Leonardo DiCaprio. All Saints, Pure Shores, that was the other track, wasn't it?
And